Oh, okay. Smile, everybody, you're on. Okay. Um, we're prone to take things for granted. So much so that eventually we don't know that what we have taken for granted simply disappears. And so it is with is. It's a word that's in all, it is a word that is almost in every sentence. And that it becomes the complacency of it is what it is, which we did a whole meeting on a couple of years ago. Now, the problem when I now talk is that I will be using the word is in my explanation of is, which will be highly complicated. So bear with me. Do not rest. Do not nod off. And if you've got any questions, please write them down, because I'll be saying a lot of stuff that you most probably won't agree with. Anyway, so size does count. The smaller something is, the greater the problems and the greater the changes make to the whole. For example, the quanta. And you'll notice that the smaller you get, the larger the problems. In my work, especially in the book I'm writing, is kept on popping up, and it just bothered me. And now I'm going to bother you. Why should I do this alone? Okay, is an assertion. Is an insidious word. It lays down the law. Is tells us what is, i.e., it is more than might be. Is contains certainty. It is more certain than represents something. I maintain, and this is the heart of what I'm going to say today, is that is not ontological certainty, but a subjective certainty. For example, this flower is blue, which really means I think I know this flower is blue. So I'm talking about it from that point of view. Okay, is denotes a state of affairs, whether it is true or not. Is simply allows a state of affairs as perceived and thought about by the observer. So while is ostensibly neutral and seemingly objective, it is subjective to the observer, without whom there would be no is. Without us, there is no is. That's what I'm saying. And in fact, neither would there be isn't. Even the sentence is uncertain is a certainty, i.e., uncertainty becomes a certainty. Is a false friend, perceptually holding you in the present even when you're already in the past, and it backs up a belief useful to your position even when that may not be the case, similar to free will that you need to believe you have. Now, how can we tackle this? Is epistemological, not ontological, as I've said. This is reality, and I maintain that is the limit to our knowledge. There's nothing beyond is. That is our knowledge. That's it. Reality changes with our knowledge of reality. What is. So is changes. Knowledge is based on what was, the moving memory of what has been. There can never be an is. The future is not an is. So we need to ask, where is? There's a problem with what connections connected to is. What is? So what is reality? That sentence implies that there is reality, and also that there might not be reality. Whereas what is consciousness refers to something that definitely is, because we are conscious. So why am I dealing with is rather than the other parts of the verb to be, am or are? Well, am is clearly and overtly subjective. I am. Are, you are, is a subjective view of a person or persons being addressed. The other are, the plural, they are, is a subjective view of a number of people or things, whereas is ostensibly a neutral singular designation of everything else. Having a singular designation pins it down, whereas the plural is spread and necessarily along a timeline, since no two things can be the same. In a hierarchy of subjectivity, from the most subjective to the least subjective, it would be I am, we are, they are, something is. At the bottom, or the top, depends which way you look at it, of the hierarchy, we are the center of the universe, which emanates from each of us. I am. This is the opposite to what is behind the Copernican principle, which places humans as the least important element in the universe. Is in a different metaphysical place. Is a peg. It pegs statements down. Is exact in a world where everything that comprises it is approximate. Is ostensibly objective, but it isn't, as we will see. What it does is to give a veneer of objectivity to a statement or an opinion. In philosophical terms, the hierarchy is from the ontological to the epistemological, from am to is. Is can only be what is known. We can't claim I am dead, but he, she is dead can be claimed. Which brings us naturally to science, to physics, and most explicitly to quantum mechanics. A particle is only when it is measured. How can is apply to what we don't know exists until we have found it, measured it? Is it then an is? What was it before it was an is? Surely we can only comprehend something that already exists. Was, by the way, is less of a mystery than is. Where we have been is less uncertain than where we will be. Just let me quote American author Robert Anton Wilson. I quote, is a trap. It necessarily traps us into the perception of a non-relative world. Is the idiocy of the word haunts me. If it were abolished, human thought might begin to make sense. I don't know what anything is. I only know how it seems to me at this moment. Wilson was on a crusade, by the way, in support of truth relativism for decades. He often wrote about the idea that whenever we say X is Y, you are at best stating a limited truth, if any truth at all. I disagree with that because X is Y means they are the same. So X is Y makes no sense. Tom is Bill. That makes no sense. 20th century logician Alfred Kretinsky argued that our language often encourages us to think in non-relativistic ways that are incorrect. For example, if we didn't use is, we could never say an electron is a particle or an electron is a wave. We would have to say something like, when I look at it in one way, it seems to be a particle. When I look at it in another way, it seems to be a wave, which is both relativistic and much more accurate. Now, I always speak about time at some point. So when we say what is the time, it's not only that everyone's timepiece is very slightly different to everyone else's, but it is different according to one's location and everyone else's. This we get from Einstein's special theory of relativity, in which there is no universal time. So there is no answer to the question, what is the time? Since it depends on whose time you were referring to. Sorry about that. There is no is for time, since each refers only to each individual person. For everyone else, time will be approximate, relative to someone else's time. It should be, what is your time? I can't not mention so-called time travel. If you travel back in time, was will be is. If you travel forward in time, will be is. So now we get to the fun part. This was great fun, I know. Now comes even more fun. If you where is not. For something to be not implies that there was an is. The default position is, or that there could have been a was. At this point, I have to be very frank with you. At this point, I was going to talk about the liar paradox. I'm going to show you how it can be solved with is. But when I started really looking at it, just before I came on, I realized the whole thing is absolute rubbish. The sentence, this sentence is false, is a game that philosophers play, and yet the sentence itself makes no sense. What does it mean the sentence is false? I can say this gold is false, but how can I say the sentence is false? Therefore, I'm leaving that out. I just wanted to let you in on the secret. So what I'm saying is the base is always is. Existence, non-existence. Okay, so can we imagine an absence? Is absence is? My answer is yes. Nothing. Here I should just say, those who've read my book, Nothing Matters, a book about nothing, will know what I'm talking about, because I lay out very specifically the difference between nothingness, the absence of something, and nothing, the absence of everything. All right. So when I say that nothingness is, what I'm saying is the absence of something that we can imagine as having been. So let me tell you this story. In 1913, the Mona Lisa was stolen in Paris, and people came to see the space where it had been in the Louvre. They came to see nothingness. They actually queued up to see the absence of the Mona Lisa. In fact, more people came to see that space than had ever come to see the Mona Lisa itself. They were queuing up. And I said, you can't tell me that nothing isn't, because nothingness is definitely something. Okay. Oliver Sacks summarized the problem, wrongly, by the way. How can one, I quote, how can one describe nothingness, no being, non-entity, when there is nothing to describe? He was wrong. He did not make the difference between the absence of something and the absence of nothing. So there is something to describe when you describe what is absent, nothingness. What is impossible to describe is nothing, the absence of everything. That is impossible to describe. For a start, we're not there to do it, because the absence of everything includes us. In short, the difference between nothingness and nothing is. Is cannot apply to nothing. Heidegger, all of you waiting for Heidegger, here it comes. Heidegger would have saved himself and us a lot of grief if he had concentrated on the importance of is rather than the importance of nothing, claiming that we can't get rid of nothing, i.e. what he was doing was mixing up nothingness and nothing. He said nothing noths. That is rubbish. Okay, in my humble opinion, that is. Okay, Heidegger maintained that is a becoming, a continuous development. I don't agree with that either. I say that yes, is changes, but that is because it becomes the past, not the future. Immediately we say is, it's already gone to the past. We look forward to a future, but that is based on our past. Hegel, where is he? Here we go. Somebody won't like this. Hegel did know better with his leaning on contradictions in order to come out with working results. He believed that contradictions are an inherent part of reality, and they are necessary for progress and development. According to Hegel, every idea or thing contains its own opposite, and the interaction between these opposing forces creates tension and conflict, which leads to a synthesis or a higher level of understanding. Hegel argued that these contradictions arise from the limitation of human understanding, and they are necessary for us to continually refine and improve our understanding of the world. My way is to disambiguate so-called contradictions.
Recording in progress.
To say that a contradiction is perpetuates the contradiction. Hegel's convoluted musings on nothing do nothing for nothing and nothing for us. With all due respect, and I have a lot of respect, actually I don't. Quine got himself into a tizzle with his discussion about negative existentials. He stated, quote, that there is something that does not exist is false, nonsensical, inexpressible, or contradictory. He said, Pegasus does not exist, can be explained by, and he quotes, Pegasus, an existent thing does not exist. Well, really. But I can say then that you can say Pegasus is not here. That is true, and also implies that there is a Pegasus somewhere, even though there isn't. But we can imagine Pegasus. And therefore, as far as I'm concerned, Pegasus is and Pegasus exists. Rudolf Carnap said that it is a mistake to employ the word nothing as a noun. But I'm not doing so. Nothingness, the absence of something, is a noun, since it refers to the absence of things. But nothing, the absence of everything, is a noun that isn't anything. Nothingness is a no thing, and we know what the no thing is. Is, if I may be so rude, is a bugger. A logical contradiction, is and not is a basis of logic. It is raining and it's not raining. I say that this is not a contradiction, but a matter of time. It's not a contradiction. It's a matter of time, because when it is raining and when it is not raining are two different times. Putting them together is a matter of time, not of logic. I will be killed for this, I know. But it has nothing to do with truth. So, oh dear, I've got to go much faster. So the big question in philosophy, the very, very big question is, why is there something rather than nothing? Why is there something rather than nothing? Which is, why is there is rather than not is? That's what it really means. Not is impossible. Everything is from an epistemological point of view. Once you know about something, it is. Is not is possible because the not refers to something and not to is. For example, my dog is not here. Ricky Gervais mentioned the improbability of existing. I quote, "It's amazing to be alive. The chances of being here as us, that sperm hitting that egg, is 400 trillion to 1. It's incredible that we're here. Then we die, never to exist again. No, it is not amazing to be alive. It would be amazing for us not to be alive." The is cannot be applied to the future, since the future is a probability. The future is here makes no sense. But my prediction is fine. Here is applies to my prediction, right or wrong. So my opinion is that we can predict the future is fine, even though I don't believe it, since the is applies to my opinion. Is always durational. It takes time. You have no idea how much I'm leaving out, folks, and you don't know how lucky you are. No, I'm really have to get on. So now, why not speak about God for a bit? I mean, God is good to talk about, right? I leave it at that. The problem of God is a huge problem. or for religious people and for non-religious people, actually. Negative theology was a method of thought already in early Christianity and earlier within Platonism and Neoplatonism as a way to comprehend the divine by indicating everything it was not. It's obvious from this point of view that anything that can be said about God would be inadequate because it does not and cannot encompass what God is. So to say that God is just is a problem, since it uses just in human terms, but does not represent what it means when applied to God. The point is that God's justice surpasses ours, so much so that it is inadequate to use the same name for it. Now, here comes the solution that is also the problem. In order to deal with the inadequacy of applying just to God, one would have to say that God is not just. The problem, of course, is that it looks as though we are denying that God is just, whereas we are in fact saying that God is not just in the way that humans understand it. So, moving rapidly along, leaving out a lot of good stuff, I want to show you is regarding is being existence, and for example, Harry Potter is whatever. I say that's fine. I say epistemologically, anything that we can imagine is. I know some of you won't like that. A unicorn is. A unicorn is a one-horned horse-like animal. We can use is only about things we can imagine. But what about a squircle, a circle and a square? How can we use a squircle? Well, a squircle actually is a combination of two shapes that we can imagine. So squircle is fine as far as I'm concerned if we think of those two things. Okay, I'll have to finish soon. There is no is that is not approximate. For example, you would think that the speed of light is exact, right? 300,000 kilometers a second. But this is false, since this is a measurement of there and back. We cannot measure time going out. We can only measure it when it comes back. So light is that amount of time is approximate, but is applies to it. I will now have to finish here. You're lucky, but let me just say, it is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that they are difficult. These are the words from Seneca, the Roman philosopher who took his own life. I'm not surprised. And that Liz Truss, the Prime Minister of Britain for 50 days, mentioned in her resignation speech on the steps of Downing Street. I'm not surprised either. And now I will stop here. I see lots of people got their hands up, which means I'm in big trouble. And I will do it in order, more or less, unless there's somebody new who wants to talk. I will push them in instead. The first one is our Walker. Oh yes, and please, I must beg you to make your comments as short as possible, as we'll be here for at least 6 hours, at least, because if you multiply the number of minutes that people speak, so please, if you speak quickly, you'll get another chance afterwards, and everybody can try. Josh, off you go.
Off I go. Yeah, so I wanted to throw my hat in here and making an argument in favor of a kind of a pragmatic view of the nature or the origin of the is. So according to the pragmatic view, and by pragmatism, you can kind of throw into the mix the American pragmatist Dewey James, as well as postmodernists, or more specifically post-structuralists, and people like Heidegger. So by pragmatic in this in the sense in which I mean it, one isn't dealing with presences. One isn't dealing with time in terms of presence, the now as a present moment, which either is so fleeting that we can't get a hold of it and have to rely on the past, or some other way of looking at it as present. Rather, the pragmatic view, and going back to dipping into Heidegger here, he talks about understanding the is in terms of the as structure. So to say this is a whiteboard is to say that I see it as a whiteboard. So the as structure is a hermeneutical. It talks about, allows us to understand what is in front of us in terms of how it matters to us, how it is relevant to us. So we always understand the isness of anything in terms of its role in an ongoing set of practices. So this allows us to go back and look at the notion of is, not as an isolated present moment, because that's where I think we get into trouble. And then we have to try and figure out, well, how do we connect or understand the difference between this now moment of this present is versus the past and the future? But rather that you cannot disentangle the now moment of the is from the past and the future, because there is no general past. The past is always a specific contextual now past. It's a past which is being animated by and defined in relation to the present, and vice versa. So there is no, these aren't separate phases, past, present, and future, which we then have to connect or understand the relation between. They presuppose each other. And that's what Heidegger meant by the nothing, the das Nichtet, the nothing nothings. By nothing, he meant nothing is always a particular, nothing is there in the structure of every moment of the is, in the sense that every moment of experience, every meaningful this is a pragmatic, this is plays a role. This now is a particular transformation. It's a particular use. It's a particular creative going forward from the past, and that implies a nothing. That is to say, we sort of annihilate the past in a certain sense as part of being in this present moment. So the nothing for Heidegger is creative. It's a fecund nothing. Nothing is affirmative rather than a lack, rather than an absence. Rather than something that we have to get beyond. And I'll stop there. I don't want to talk too much.
Do you know how many times you said is in what you just said?
Yeah, that's okay.
No, it's fine. My point is, my point is to land on is. We can all explain it. We can all say what it should be, but the point is that the is binds us, whether we like it or not. The is there. Well, and hang on, one point I do want to mention, I forgot to mention that among the things I did not forget to mention, I didn't on purpose, is that we are speaking about is in English, and there are languages that do not have
Hebrew.
Is. Yeah, Hebrew is one of them. Russian is another one. And in Russian and in Hebrew, there is no is, but there is a past and there is a future. And that sort of backs up, really, my point about is being very, very weird, and that somehow, and there are other languages, there are Turkic languages, Maori, there are all sorts of languages that do not use is, which is very strange. If language sort of represents how we think, or the other way around, there's something in that, the fact that languages do not use is. And that's my point. If all of you tell me things that is should be, that is not what I'm talking about. When I talk about Heidegger, I talked about what he does with is. And now, for those who read my other book about time, will realize that now for me is a no-no. There is no such thing as now. But thank you, Josh. You will come back, I know. So
how could I not?
Exactly. So keep on walking. Maybe you'll get tired.
Me?
No,
You'll get tired. You'll get
no.
tired before I get tired.
I know. Hi there, George. Good to see you again.
Hello, good afternoon. Where I'm at, it's afternoon. It's fascinating when you think about the fact that we will say object A is a tree and object B is a tree. So two different trees, we refer to them as trees. They are trees. That is a tree. Again, B, that is a tree. When in fact, they're not the same object. They're very dissimilar in many ways. Indeed, there are many things that we identify as tree that really are very dissimilar from one another. Because when we are identifying objects or things, what we're actually identifying is the spirit of tree. And so we could say, I mean, the way human history, we have identified the spirit of tree for time, essentially time immemorial. And so the is spirit. And here I'm directly drawing on Hegel. And so that's what we mean by is or was or will be, is we're identifying spirit. And that's basically it. That's what it comes down to. And what's interesting, and of course you talked about dialectical processes. I mean, the idea of thesis, antithesis, synthesis, that's actually falsely ascribed to Hegel. What Hegel ultimately, however, he's pointing out is that the world is dialectical, and this is what science has given us, right? So 2,000 years ago, we may very well have thought of trees or a tree statically, whereas by the late 18th and early 19th centuries, we had a more dynamic or dialectical understanding of trees. Water, carbon, sunlight, cells. And so this is what Hegel's identifying. He's identifying the dialectical nature of reality, that these different spirits interact. And so, of course, the world is ontological. The tree, even as we're identifying it as tree, is changing. Everything is always changing. And again, part of this, epistemologically is a result of science. And so, again, this is what Hegel's pointing out, that what we're looking at is not tree, because that object is, even the concept of tree, which is stable, spirit is stable, but trees are not, because again, the world is ontological. And so part of it may very well be human psychology, in that, and here maybe we're being here we are being somewhat pragmatic, but not in a cynical way. We're simply saying that it's more useful to identify tree as a stable object for our purposes, as opposed to breaking things down dialectically as they are constantly. It doesn't allow us, in essence, to move forward in the manner of speaking. But again, the broad point I'm making to you is the very fact of is a function of Hegelian reality. We're identifying the spirit of tree, the spirit of car. And that is what is attributable to. Thank you.
Actually, it was Kant who spoke about the essence. The problem with that is, as far as I'm concerned, and I have a very, very big problem with the spirit of things, is that you're talking about something objectively real out there somewhere that we can never get to. And I personally do not subscribe to things we can never get to. I have never understood the way of saying that what really is that we can never get to. If we can never get to, I do not count that as reality. Reality cannot be something we can never get to. You can never get to that spirit of a tree, and that a tree is, and that is the problem. But the problem is exactly the way you said, George, that a tree is, and we know what a tree is but what does it refer to? It refers to something that we can't get to. We can imagine. So Kant imagined that there's a thing and that I don't buy it personally, right? Because unless we can get to something that is not, as far as I'm concerned, reality.
Can I respond to that?
Okay. Yes.
Well, I mean, first and foremost, that's a dogma. Secondly, I mean, the fact is that your mind, right, is both is and isn't, right? The brain exists, but that's not the mind. The mind is the intersection between the Hegelian absolute and the brain. I mean, so in other words, the problem comes down to this, Ron, is that your perspective doesn't even give us a theory of the mind. And so, I mean, I'm almost like, your mind is proof positive that you're wrong about something not being actually being, if you will. Thank you.
No, I'm very likely wrong. I would never, ever, ever say to you, I am right. That would be completely against my whole philosophy, because I don't get to right and wrong. They don't make sense to me. So I would never tell you I'm right. It is how I think that things can be. And in that sense, I subjectively think I'm right, but it doesn't mean anything. Right? It's just something I just put down. But everybody thinks they're right. Everybody.
Ideally, you think you're right based on evidence, in fact, not just arbitrarily or dogmatically. Ideally,
well, there's no evidence for a reality that we can never get to. There's no evidence. If we can't get to it, there is no evidence. It's just they're just words. It's explaining what the spirit of a tree. That's not evidence.
Let me say this. Allow me to respond this way.
Okay.
Gravity. Okay. We can't touch it. We can't see it. We can't feel it. It exists. It's an invisible field that envelops us, that shapes the behavior of matter and energy. By your logic, gravity does not exist.
No. On my logic, things that fall down show me that there's gravity. That's enough for me. It's enough for me. It's not enough for a science. It's enough for me.
Okay. The point is this, Ron. The point is this. You take a manifestation. In other words, you accept secondary evidence as evidence of the primary. So you accept gravity exists based on behavior of matter and energy. So I'm saying that spirit of tree exists in the way that humans interpret and understand the world. That is evidence that the spirit of tree exists.
No.
Okay.
But don't go away. I'm going to get back to you. Thank you very much, George. Michael, good to see you again.
Hi, sorry, I have to leave soon, but obviously the word that we are discussing it's very broad. So disambiguation is important here. And I have 4 points, but I'll try to make them really quickly. First, regarding why everything exists at all, I guess we'll never know, but the broadest answer for this could be the anthropic principle. So we know that we exist, so there should be something in the nature that enabled our existence, and that's all that we can say. Then although it's often considered as almost synonymous to indication of existence of something, but it does not need to be. For instance, we can have models of the world, fictional models in our minds that may include Pegasus and Griffins and all kinds of fictional characters that don't exist in some objective sense, although probably we have to qualify what does it mean to exist objectively. But anyway, so they are fictional, but they are real within this model. And what is referring usually is to indicate the relationship between the thing and the broad category. So when we are saying that an oak is a tree, or redwood is a tree, that's what we mean. And this is how is used in software, in computer science, in this concept of object-oriented programming, as an indication of relationship between a specific thing and a general thing or a category. And both can be real or can be fictional, or it can be anything in between. But that's not the point. The point is this relationship between them. And my last comment is about this quantum mechanics, whether photon is a particle or a wave. I think this is a misuse of this notion of is, because this would imply that photon is an instance of particles, or a special case of particles. But this is not true. This is not what it is according to quantum mechanics. According to quantum mechanics, this is a quantum field. That's it. And all that we can say that in interactions with another quantum field, it can behave like what we expect from particles to behave. But this does not make it a particle. And the true nature of quantum field, at least to the extent that we know from quantum mechanics, it's more like a wave. But it's a wave described by a complex wave function, so it has some interesting properties. But if you want to say what a photon is or what light is, it is a wave. It is a special kind of wave. So it's not a particle.
No,
So
fine.
let me stop at this.
No problem with that. No, I agree with you. I mean, the point is that when we talk about a particle, we have something in our minds.
Right.
But that thing in our minds is an is. Even if you say that there's no such thing, we talk about particles, and a particle is something. Is. It's a dot which does not exist, can't exist. I agree with you, but it's an is, which is enough. And I agree with what you said in the beginning, that well, what I say, which is not liked very much, but what can I do, is that anything that we can imagine exists. It's enough for us to imagine it. That's my epistemological stand. What I know exists. I do not have an ontological philosophy. I used to, but I've now come to the conclusion it's epistemological. Therefore, anything I can imagine, anything, and there are things that we can't imagine. They're not ises. They can't be. They're not anywhere. So I think that's what more or less what you said. The things that we can imagine, right? They're fiction. So that Harry Potter is something.
Mm-hmm.
Even if and whatever exists means we're not going to go into, that would take another tremendous length of time. But basically, I agree with you, Michael. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Terry, and who? 1 minute. Did you say, where is she? Somebody just told me that they can't raise their hand. I think she did.
Oh, that was me.
Okay. You can't.
And
Oh,
I
yes,
figured
Oh, you did.
lots of people helped me.
Oh, you did raise it. Okay, fine. If you don't mind, I'm going to, James, can I put in Yoti before you because she's new, never been before? Is that okay?
You can put her in before me. That's fine. Let her talk right now.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. We've got two gentlemen here on the left. Jyoti, off you go.
Tap to speak. I put my comment in the chat, and I see a lot of exploration of what is and how is and where is. But I would love if we explored why is.
Oh.
I mean, as you said, there are certain languages in which is does not exist. So why in English do we need is?
That is a huge question.
Yeah.
It needs it's most probably a PhD answer to that. There
No, there is a lot of exploration of,
yes,
the presence of is.
yes, you're right.
So
You're right. There are languages that don't have none of the to be at all. The point is that there are languages
how can they function without is?
very well.
So then what is it? How do they function without is?
Because they use words around it. They will use all sorts of words that will represent what's going on at the moment or
Ron,
in
Ron,
the
can I
present.
speak to this?
Yes,
Okay,
Clark.
can somebody
Well,
give me an
1 second.
example
Yes,
of
I'll give you an
in a
example.
language where is
Yeah.
not used? How
Clark,
they
I'll
would
give you an
say,
example.
let's say, the fan is on.
That's easy.
I can give you an example.
Yeah.
Please do.
Yes, Clark.
Yeah, I have a neighbor across my alley. He grew up in the Micronesian Islands on the Ulithi Atoll, and he does not have the form of to be in his language. So I said, Gene, how did you say that Clark is a piano tuner? And he goes, well, that would be difficult. What I would say is that I saw you tuning pianos yesterday, and I predict you tune pianos tomorrow. Therefore, I think that you're a piano tuner. But the point here is the humility of it and how it works politically and psychologically. We get chemical rewards when we use the word is in all of our fancy philosophy. I do it too. I love it. If we were more aware of the chemical rewards we're getting from being God, essentially, and saying, let there be light, there is what is, that is so powerful in a social mammal species where cooperation is so important. So that's just my 2 cents. I hope that gives you an example. That's why I'm involved in this discussion. I can't think of a more relevant issue politically.
No, I understand what you said. However, so in Polynesian, something is not certain. You're making assumptions. The person is making assumptions.
You're telling a story, and the
Yeah, you're
story has
telling
a
us-
beginning.
Yes.
Yes.
So story can be interpreted, or myth can be interpreted versus fact. So in Polynesian, there is no fact. Like
Fact is an invention. Yeah.
We've got a problem with the word
Fact was an invented word in the 17th century.
Yeah, I agree.
Yes, fact is something that is true until it changes.
Well, I would go even further than that. A fact is not a fact. In any case, but that's another story and another meeting. I can give you.
It would be great to have a meeting just on the function of is. Thank you.
No, I can give you examples from Hebrew if you want. It uses.
Yes, I would love that.
It does not use is at all, neither in classical Hebrew or in modern Hebrew. It just doesn't use it, and it doesn't need it. If I say
I speak. Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt, Ron, but I speak Hindi, and I was trying to figure out if there was a is in Hindi. and I'm having difficulty. But please give the example in Hebrew.
Anything I can say. The boy is here. In Hebrew, it would be the boy here, and it be understood that it's present. You don't need it as such, but you do need the past and you do need the future, and they do exist. There is no need for is, which is very interesting in the light of all the things that I said, that they actually don't need it. But we do, and your question is right. Why do some languages need it and others don't? And they get on very, very well because everybody, as Clark says, will get across the meaning that they want to get across, because people are basically part of humanity. Can say what they want to say, and they'll use different words to put them together, and they will say what they want to say, just in a different way. And there's Russian as well. Am I right, Michael?
Yes, the same thing.
They don't need it.
लड़का है, लड़का यहाँ पे है, लड़का है.
Your hair, I think, is as far as I remember.
Yeah, है is. So, but here, लड़का here. So boy here versus boy is here. It seems like there's a lot more information with the is.
No, not really.
Really?
Why?
Because
I'm here. So what?
no, so I hear doesn't let you know the present, past. It doesn't let you know time. It doesn't let you know.
It does because you've
where
got the past. But
it doesn't. Well, I hear.
But
how would you say boy was here?
But in Hebrew there is the past. There's no problem. There's no problem. There's the past and there's the future. There is no present. That's it. It doesn't need it. They got on very well without
Ron, in Hebrew, how do you say the boy was here?
There's a verb for was. There is a verb. It's simple.
So what is the verb?
The boy was here in Hebrew. Hayeled haya sham, if you really want to know it. The boy was there. Was. There's a verb. Was. There is no present. That's all. It doesn't stop anybody from saying anything. Okay, so thank you very much, Yoti. You'll be on again whenever you want. Clark, thank you very much for your input. You will be on your turn. James.
Thank you so much, Ron. I really appreciate it.
No, I appreciate your input. Terry, did you disappear on purpose? No, but your hand is not.
Oh, I didn't put it down. It somehow got automatically put down. I didn't do that.
I never. Not guilty. Put it back up again.
Okay, that's strange. I don't know what.
I never touched any yellow hands. I promise.
Yeah.
Okay, James. Sorry for the delay.
No, Terry was ahead of me. Can you please let Terry go?
This is really Terry. You're a very great gentleman, James. Terry, it's your turn, even without the hand.
Oh, and my hand just went down again. I tried to put it up. It's
sabotage.
I don't know what happened. I like Clark's point about the was it Micronesian language, Indonesian language, the idea that it in terms of what was and what could be as opposed to certainty. I think the main reason English and some languages have is because in certain linguistic groups and in certain kind of philosophical events, we favor certainty to a much higher degree than other languages do. And so I think it reflects the philosophy of language. Certainty is very attractive because you like certainty. As you get older, you like the certainty of this, the certainty of that. Life itself likes certainty because if you don't have a certain predictability, it's impossible to stay alive. So it's a valued commodity. And I think in some cases, and certainly within the mathematical domains, it's been exalted to the point of an absolute given, even if the physical universe does not support that conclusion. Michael, I like your point about how particles don't really exist. That is absolutely a connotation of quantum field theory. But I would point the contrary to you, that quantum field theory has its own problem, which it says that waves absolutely exist. They have infinite precision. They carry photons across galactic spaces without any loss of resolution. You have just, you can't even describe the amount of information that is required in order to get the precise resolution of the photon for doing that. So I would say that quantum field theory simply goes in the opposite direction and says waves are absolute and is. The framework of the wave is perfect, which has always been an interesting problem in quantum field theory, because the original Schrodinger quantum field theory didn't do that. The Schrodinger formulation didn't have that level of certainty about waves. So that's an interesting thing. The other point I was going to make originally was that, apart from quantum theory, relativity taken seriously said the whole idea that things exist out beyond me is much more indeterminate than you think it is, because space itself is a bit of a fiction. It's a set of assumptions to say at the speed of light, I'm going to assume nothing changes, because speed of light is very, very fast and things change slow. Works great on Earth, works great in a lot of places, not universal. And it's never absolutely true. There's always the possibility what you think was the state of something in some other distant point has changed. So we always do a little bit of fiction when we simply say and pretend everything has an immediate state, because that is an absolutely impossible statement to make in physics. You can never state that. No observer ever has that viewpoint. It doesn't work that way. So my final point was, I think it was George, made a passing comment about science being what is the Hegel term? I'm sorry, what is the
Essential? Hegel? Essential?
No, the dialectic. The science is
dialectical.
Not dialectic. It's okay. The point I was going to make is, so I think you said the science was dialectical. It is not. Science, you will never hear the dialectic invoked in science. You will hear analytic is the term that's used there, and there does make a difference. The few times in history where the dialectic philosophy, or I would call it a religion, has been imposed on science have been catastrophic.
I don't think you understand my point. So,
well, I'm just making it just what is.
I don't understand. I'm not even sure what you mean by dialectic, quite frankly. I mean, I would ask you to look it up. Dialectic simply means things interact. Yes. You know, things interact. That's all it means. Things interact.
Well, the original dialectic was a polarization, an opposition to things creates a synthesis of the new. And you don't see that in science. That's not the way it's looked at.
Again, that view has falsely been attributed to Hegel. That's not Hegel's view. Dialectical simply means things interact. A tree is a dialectical relationship between carbon, water, photosynthesis. That's all that dialectic means.
So the dialectic was then modified later by Marx and others to mean have a different meaning, a polarization.
Yes, as a matter of fact, that's absolutely what happened. Marx falsely attributed that to Hegel.
I did not know that. Why is it called dielectric, though? It does say two. It doesn't have a polarization in the name itself. That's why I assumed it went back to Hegel.
I mean, I don't know what the etymology of the word. I just know that things just interact, right? Nature, in other words, the fact is that reality is a process. It's not a thing, right? So things are constantly interacting. Nature, the world operates in a dialectical manner. Again, nothing's stable. What is stable is spirit. So the spirit of tree is stable. And here it is pulling. You can see the similarities between Plato, but we do see tree. So it's a psychology, it's spirit, it is a metaphysic. The tree is the spirit. The tree itself is always operating dialectic. It's always changing. So there's a difference between spirit and reality.
Okay.
Matter.
Hang on.
Thanks for the correction on Hegel. I'll look that up, in fact, see exactly where that came in, because I don't want to attribute to Hegel what actually came from Marx. That is a firm statement that has led to some catastrophic consequences, but it's not fair to blame it on Hegel. That's a later adaptation of the same word. Nonetheless, it goes without saying that in scientific communities and scientific research, nobody talks about spirits of trees. So I understand what you're saying, but I'm just saying in terms of terminology, that particular philosophical approach just does not exist in the community.
That's irrelevant. I mean, that's not relevant to the fact.
Analytics,
Hang on. We can't all talk at once.
Well, that's not relevant. Forgive me. That's not relevant to the fact that.
Hang on, George.
Let me say this. If I can say something, which is to say that it's a mistake, an epistemological, metaphysical mistake. And it didn't even make any sense to speak about the world simply as matter and energy. In other words, you're speaking of science as the study of matter and energy. Okay, and it's fine. I mean, there is that, but science does not comprise the world, but far from it, right? Indeed, again, there is spirit of tree, there is spirit of water, right? The way that humans interact. So there's science, and then there's reality beyond and broader than science.
That's the problem.
George, I'll make a final comment on that. Well, do I have a final? Science is not the study of matter and energy. At least I certainly would not define it that way. It is the ability to do evidence-based verification.
So who's picking
of
up?
what you were saying. I'm sorry, somebody's talking. Evidence-based verification of what you did. Now that can bring up concepts of matter and energy, but if you're taking the scientific approach seriously of saying, can I postulate that this will cause that to happen, and then repeatedly prove it? That's the essence of science.
You're
science or matter or energy. It just says this is a methodology, friends. And I'll leave it.
You're conflating
George,
empiricism with science.
George, hang on. We got people waiting. Please, you'll be back. I promise you. I will fight you later. Trust me. Trust me. James, at last.
Yeah, I love that exchange. I love that exchange. Thank you, Terry and George. That was excellent.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So I want to thank Josh, for bringing up the as structure as a way to understand the is. So epistemology is not easy, and I think that's really what this brings up, is the I wanted to talk about the relativity of truth. We could talk about the importance of individuals that are here and that are in this drama, right? That's why we come on Sunday morning. It's a drama, but the relative importance is probably much greater than, say, a piece of dust on my screen, or even on my camera, even if it was on my camera and basically impeding everyone's ability to do this brilliant watch the speaker exercise that you stress, Ron. So I think this that level of significance is relevant when we talk about the is and the isn't. So and actually you do have this kind of put down of the isn't. In other words, as soon as we negate the existence, like as soon as we negate existence, you want to combat that. You say there is not nothing, right? It sort of comes up in this statement. This sentence is false, right? But actually, this sentence is false, even though it's a paradox, and we're uncomfortable with paradoxes in general. It does bring up the idea of the lie. Paradoxes bring up the idea of the truth and falsity, and the fact that any statement, including ones that actually say is, I can say there's no dust on my screen, but that's ridiculous. There's lots of microparticles, and I didn't clean my screen since I bought this laptop. So this kind of certainty is sometimes ill-gotten, that when we use the is. And I think that's kind of like what's behind the epistemological common complaint that can be made, is the is. Well, it's not necessary. We can just lose the present. We can lose the isness of the present, and that's everything's going to be fine as soon as we do that. But all this kind of truth and falseness is real. It actually does exist. People there are things that are said to be facts that turn out not to be facts at all. Experiments that aren't repeatable. Even human lives that are spent trying to reproduce a truth that wasn't reproducible. So this the issue of the is, in whether it's understood or related narratively in a history, or it's it does matter. And these without using is or was or will be, we will be able to we can still get into the same quandaries of existence and non-existence, and so those quandaries, which are in themselves implicitly difficult because they imply contradiction, they imply the embrace of nothingness, which is so important in certain languages. We in Spanish they use nothing as a means of saying it's not important. It's kind of like just a common way of making things unimportant. Stop considering that it's not relative to the actual situation. And then of course in German it works in a slightly different way than it does in English, but it's still because it's actually a component of many phrases where where in English it's not quite as popular, but it's still a usable word. So I think the whole point is really good, but it comes down to this kind of like epistemological point. Are we going to accept that there is both things that are true and false, or are we going to insist that everything that we say and that other people on the screen say are always going to be absolutely true? And the fact is that they're not going to be true. They're just going to be true from a certain standpoint. And maybe that standpoint can be even one that is ontologically very questionable. Like, in other words, the idea that time is defined such and such, and or that there's some dogma, right, standing behind the expression. So I think that's basically the crux of where we are when we just try to dismiss nothing, when we try to insist on an ultimate correctness of language that excludes simple expressions of existence, because that's something that's really relevant to who we are. Existence is relevant to who we are and to the life that we lead. We lead a life full of existence. So that's all. Existence is a really important concept, and is the verb of existence.
Thank you very much, James. Quite a bit of that I agreed with, for a change. And existence, but the point is, and the point you made about dismissing nothing. If you keep to my point that there's a difference between the absence of something and the absence of everything, we cannot dismiss either of them. Can't dismiss nothingness, the absence of something, because there's always an absence of something, always. But the nothing, the absence of everything, we can't even talk about. And that is why I have a huge problem with this, because if I ever give a lecture on nothing and I have to talk about nothing, the absence of everything, people jump at me and saying, but you are talking about it. I say, but there's nothing I can do about that. I have to put it into language, even though talking about it completely denigrates the whole point of it. I can't talk about nothing, but I have to. So it's not, we have to dismiss nothing. We don't even dismiss nothing, because it just isn't. And we aren't in nothing. We just aren't. But anyway, that's another discussion.
I think what you're saying, I think you're merely simply stating that nothing always applies to a situation. And if you want to say that
No.
As a human being, as a human actor, you're always in a situation. And if you want to talk about nothing, you have to talk about nothing applying to a situation, even a hypothetical one.
No.
Then that's the way you have to talk about nothing. Then I think that's perfectly okay.
But that's not what
You're
I'm
using
saying.
nothing correctly in that case, and there's no argument.
I'm not saying that. We cannot use nothing, the absence of everything. We cannot use it. You can use nothing.
Well, I disagree with you completely, because you gave a good example of where you would use it. So in other words, any intelligent speaker would say there's nothing to that. There's nothing in that.
No, but
there's nothing about that.
No. All that is nothingness. You can't, nothing means that we're not here to talk about it. That's it. That's it.
You just used the word before you used the word. I used the word correctly. You used the word correctly.
No, I
the
didn't.
fact is that word means exactly what we want it to mean. We mean there's nothing in the situation. There's nothing in the matter.
There's no situation. I can't get this across. There's no situation.
We can only talk about situations.
No,
we can't make up a situationless existence.
I can't talk about me being dead when I'm not dead, right? Can't do it.
Yes, you can. You can talk about when you're dead.
No, I can't. Being dead, nobody can talk about it. The state of being dead.
Well, no, being dead.
That's it.
That
that's
depends
nothing.
what tense you're in.
But that's
if
nothing.
You're saying I can't talk about being dead, yes, you can.
No.
If you were dead, then you couldn't talk about it.
That's exactly what I said. The state of being dead cannot be talked about by the person who's dead. That is nothing. That's all I'm saying. I can't get this across. I don't know why it's so difficult. There is no situation of nothing. There is no situation. There's only situation for other people, but not for the one in nothing. Anyway, let's move on, because I can't get this across, and I don't know why. But anyway,
a situation for the rest of us, Warren.
But that's not
nothing for the rest of us.
But for the rest of you, it's not nothing. It's nothingness. It's the absence of that person. I'm trying to get this across.
You're being semantical. You're saying there's a special word that has to be used.
Yes, it is a special word, because it's a very difficult word. But it's okay.
Maybe if you get a chance, you can explain that, because you're basically making a semantic point.
I'm not, but read the book and you'll see it.
Which book?
My book. I keep on telling you.
Prolific, huh?
No, nothing matters. I spell it out word by word by word in 200 and something pages.
All right.
Please.
We're going into a black hole of nothing.
Yes, we are. No, black hole.
Yeah.
The black hole is not nothing. Anyway, thank you very much, James. It's always fun talking to. Seriously, I always like it. Claudio, is it okay? Claudio, is it okay? Claudio?
Yes.
Is it okay if I put Michael M before you because he's new?
Yes, go ahead. Yeah.
Yep, thank you very much. Michael M.
Oh my God.
Yep.
Who doesn't exist? No, I just wanted to add something a bit linguistic. You talked about Hebrew and Russian, which I don't speak. I so happen that I speak a little bit of Japanese, and in Japanese there's a different way. There is past, there is present, but there's no future.
Interesting.
So, and that can apply to a verb or even to an adjective. For instance, delicious is either delicious in the present, oishi, or it was delicious when you finished, when you swallowed the delicious pastry. It's oishikata, so it was delicious. But the idea of the future, there's no way to say. The only thing is you can say the train is coming at 7, and it's 5 now, but the train comes at 7. So in a way, this whole division of past and future it applies differently. The non-accomplished exists in Japanese. I just wanted to point that out. I also just wanted, as an anecdote, it so happened that the Café Philo in English, happens where Jean-Paul Sartre wrote in French, L'être et le néant. In the same room, that's where we meet. But le néant would be, according to your definition, Ron, apparently is nothingness, and not at all. I don't understand why somebody else did not understand your meaning that nothing is impossible and nothingness is very real. I understand it completely. I don't have very much to say about that. I was just wondering, what would you say about things like, I don't know, justice, equality, jealousness? Are these things that they cannot be described like trees. I understand not the spirit of the tree, by the way, but the belonging to a family of things like the family of tables. I mean, I so happen that have many tables that don't look at all like each other, but the family of tables does exist in some countries and doesn't exist at all in others. So I would call that a family, or I'm not finding the right word in English right now. It's rare, but sometimes my English is not there. Well, I got lost in what I was saying, but I don't have much to say except that I'm really enjoying this cafe because you're talking about the real object. There is, to use the word I feel that there's a research here among you, plural, that you're looking for the most impossible thing to look for, which is the truth of a word. We might. I have a feeling that somebody said something that was parallel to that. That when you say a tree, let's take that example, you are describing something that corresponds to an idea which englobes things from Christmas trees to weeping willows, just because we have learned that, but nevertheless, it definitely does not describe a tree at all. It's a sort of a representation. It's a sort of a statue that you're looking at, which says tree. We somehow, children all draw trees the same way, but they never draw weeping willows, and or they draw Christmas trees. They don't draw whatever that old tree is in the United States. I can't remember its name right now, that are 2,000 years old. It just describes a Christmas tree. But the idea tree somehow is understood by little boys and little girls to be something that then can be enlarged. So the word does not, nouns in general do not describe things. They describe the idea of things, the general family of things. I'll stop there because
I think that's fair.
I would like to get more into grammar of verbs, as opposed to I was looking at the Greek origin of to be is esit, which is a bit like the French word to be. But if we get into nouns, etc., it's a bit more difficult.
We're not, because we'll be here all day and all night. The point is that I chose this tiny word is, not was, not will be, not any of that at all. Is, as far as I'm concerned, is special. It does something. It does something in our minds. It tells us about existence, and it's used all the time. This is the problem. Every sentence we say is.
And if I may say, it's in the third person of the singular, whereas in French, the word that it would naturally come is the infinitive. And I'm sure there are many things to say about that, but I won't.
No, that would have to be another meeting. But I zoomed in on is because it's giving me a lot of trouble. If I write about epistemology and ontology, and I the is keeps on hitting me, and it knocks me aside because it's telling me something that I'm not. I don't want to deal with it, but it keeps on floating up like a turd. It's just there, and it bothers me. And I thought, I'm going to talk about it, and I can see what everybody says, and all very, very interesting. All very interesting, but is a special case. It's not me. I'm not the subjective is anymore. The is out there somewhere. That you talk about a tree is. I want to know what a tree is. I've got no idea what a tree is, but I don't go for spirits personally. I don't go for an objective truth out there that we can never get to. We can't. I personally don't go for it. I'm not very much liked for not going for it, but there's nothing I can do about it. I don't go for that stuff. Right? If we can never, ever get to it, then what's the point of saying that's reality? It's just playing around. As far as I'm concerned, it's just playing around. So, but thank you very much, Michael. That's very, very nice. You can come back whenever you want with a yellow hand, and we got a lot of yellow hands, I see. Claudio, it's your turn, as brief as possible. Everybody, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll try to do it in less than 1 hour. Yes, earlier in your introduction, Ron, you said is false holding you in the present when you are, actually in the past. So I believe it appeared that you were alluding to pastism, where only the past exists and the present and future are non-existent. And that sounds true, and then Josh later said that the present is fleeting, because the past the present, something becomes less than 1 second, it becomes part of the past, right? It's very fleeting. Yet in less than a second, but yet the microsecond is utilized by scientists and engineers, so it's very real. It does exist, the microsecond as a unit of time. When you introduce language to, then it becomes, there appears to be a problem when you use language, because I'll give you an example. Let's suppose I'm talking to, let's say, Grace. I'm just using that name randomly. And I say something very insulting to Grace. And the chemistry in her brain starts changing, and she raises her voice. And she, in turn, insults me, right? And then she's still angry. And I interrupt her. When I interrupt her, this doesn't sound right if I say to her, Grace, you were angry. I'm sorry. But she's still angry. I interrupted her, right? So it seems more accurate to say, Grace, you are angry. Are, means like is, same thing. And according to Green, are is not ontological. It's not there's no real truth in it. Let's say from an atomic perspective, though, then is in many instances cannot be used because everything, all objects are made of, let's say, atoms, molecules. And George earlier said that the world is dialectical. It's everything is always changing. That is true, I believe, in many instances, right? Heraclitus said things are in constant flux. For example, if I were to introduce a foreigner, let's say from Asia or Europe or Africa, to the Mississippi River, and I were to say to them, "This is the Mississippi River," that person would be arguably right to say, "No, it isn't. This is not the same river. You can't give it a name because it's constantly changing. The molecules are always changing in the river because it's flowing, and those molecules eventually become part of the ocean. So it's never the same river, right? It's always changing. It's always in the constant flux. And you could say, I guess you can use the same argument for the human body. Our atoms are constantly being replaced by other atoms. So we are never atomically the same person. We're constantly changing. And each time we drink a glass of water, we are introducing new types of atoms into our body. So we're atomically, from an atomic perspective, we can't really use is, because we're always becoming different people in that sense. Yeah, I agree with what George said earlier and what Josh said about certain things. Okay, that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claudio. Richard.
Okay, I'll try to be brief. First, about there is no is in several languages. There was no word for blue until the Egyptians started to use the color blue in either fabrics or pottery, I can't remember which, and they described the word. Before that, the Greeks talked about the wine dark sea. You invent words in a language when you need them. Then to move on to the use of is in English, or actually I don't think it is English, I think it's Indo-European languages. Both the languages you mentioned that don't use is are not Indo-European. I think it's just helpful to have it. But I would point out that in formal languages where you cut everything you don't need out, for instance, logic, there is both an upside A for all of a certain class, and there is a backwards E for there exists at least one of. And so the point of there exists, there is important, and without it, you probably wouldn't be able to have a database. And as I think it was Michael said, he went into database design a little bit. You have an entity relationship diagram, which you need to design databases. There is a relationship between an entity and another entity, and you need to put that in to be able to get a relational database to run properly. So therefore, it has a practical use. It works because we know that databases work. It is there in a model, not in a language that's used between humans. Language, I mean, you're a linguist. You know that, as Chomsky says, languages are descriptive, not prescriptive. Think of the problems that have happened when we've tried to make languages, natural language that is, more prescriptive. Is useful as something that changes, that can be used in one way, can be used in another, and you normally pick it up from the context. You're leaving out context when you say there is no such thing as is. You use it all the time. I tried counting for a bit how often you were using it. I
said the exact opposite. We use it all the time. Of course there's is. Yeah. I never said there isn't. I said there are huge problems with it. Enormous.
Well, of course there are, because it's so loose. So maybe we need to go into formal languages and define everything properly. But I think you probably follow, as most linguists do nowadays, go against Russell's idea that language and logic ought to be totally related. Now, I rather liked that when I was a student.
I know you do. I was waiting for you to come up with that. And that's that. I don't want to disappoint you, but that's pretty passé.
I know it's passé. I still like it though.
Okay, that's fair enough.
I mean, but the thing is, language. No, I also like being a writer and a poet, maybe a bad one, but sometimes published. I also like the fact that I can use language however I like.
As long as people understand what you want to say. No, that's great. And that the point about language, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I just want to say the point about language is that it's approximate. I've said this so many times. Yeah. We cannot define everything. We can't do it.
But what I'm saying is we really need two types of language. We need a sort of formal language for philosophical talk. And if you won't accept logic, then we need to define and make that something where it's laid down, just like programming languages.
They tried it so many times. Never worked.
And then for natural language, we need to be able to use it creatively.
It's, as you said before, it's never worked to create a language. It just doesn't work. As soon as you create a language, you've got all the nuances and you suddenly are arguing about words again. That's the beauty of language. We sit here every first Sunday of the month and we discuss.
And you and I argue about the same thing.
Yes, but apart from that, we discuss things and we argue and we all get along, right? Yeah. We might get angry sometimes, but we get along because it's approximate. If we start saying, what do you mean by that? Then the arguments start.
Oh, look, I noticed that someone who's just been, I'm sorry, I can't remember, called this a cafe. Now, I usually refer to it as a seminar or discussion, but I was thinking about that, and the ancient Greeks used to sit around eating and drinking and having philosophical discussions, not the ones who were out listening to Socrates, admittedly, but the ones who sat around and forgotten what the word was. But they sat, well, they didn't sit, they lay on their couches while slaves brought them their drink and so on. But they had intellectual discussions some of the time. A cafe, sitting and eating and drinking for a discussion. I do see where that would come from, whichever language, was it Alan was referring to?
Not peripateticians, but they were walking.
I think the solution is for all of us to come here wearing white sheets.
No, maybe step on pillars.
That and lots of grapes. I think that would work.
Yeah, I've always fancied actually being Zeus. But anyway, that's apart from the point. I've promised to be brief. Basically, I was arguing that in a formal language, you can lay down what you want and it will mean what you say. In natural language, it's going to mean whatever you want it to say to communicate to other people. And is imperfect, but it works in English.
Of course, it all works.
Possibly works in languages which don't use it, but I bet they actually find ways around. Well, other people have proved that. And I mean, one would have to do research to find whether it's particularly Indo-European and whether all the non-Indo-European languages, because, for instance, someone was talking about Hindi, but that comes from Sanskrit, and Sanskrit is Indo-European. All the languages in Europe are Indo-European. Well, actually, no.
Well, no.
No, there's a couple. There's a couple that aren't. There's a couple. Okay, I agree. But most of them.
Be careful what you say here, Richard.
I would be if I was writing.
Be careful. Terry, by chance, I just saw what you typed. Could you say that in answer to Richard?
Yeah. The computer language issue is interesting because, of course, computer people are forced to try to be as formal as possible in how they do language. But the trick is, and I think what people miss is, it never works. This goes back to Gödel's theorems, that there's always some point at which you will wind up with a paradox. And Gödel's theorem is on broad display in the creation of some of these languages. No matter how careful you think you are, you can go very far in it, but eventually something breaks.
I've struggled with that, yeah.
Actually, fairly early, because somebody didn't anticipate something. That's what happened with the Ada programming language. They did some dumb thing. But it's not that simple.
I agree. I do totally agree there, Terry, having come across that. But
Anybody who comes to these meetings realizes that nothing is simple. I'm
exactly.
afraid to say. William, Bill, hi.
Hi. Thinking through everything that's been said this morning and trying to, I lost count of the number of uses it is in the conversations that we've had. And it seems to me that I try, as I sat here, to generalize what is in those conversations. And it seems to me that what we're talking about is using is as an interverbal connection between what's in focus in a propositional representation. That means representations that are propositional say that this is this, or that is that. And that's the issue as I see it. It's rather simple, but the representation that's in focus is not true or false by virtue of the assertion of a representation, but they're all then subject to the question of what paradigms do they reflect, whether they're true based on science. But the representation theory makes sense to me, that is a form of connection in a representation type that we use all the time. And I want to call that type a propositional type. Now, there may be many other representations that we have all the time. In law, we have rule representations, we have political representations, we have physics representations, we have biological representations, but all of them have in play certain common linguistic characters. And I'm saying in the conversation here today, it seems to me that the common property is this notion that what we're saying here is talking about an interverbal connection between the factors in focus in propositional representations. So that's my point.
Thank you very much, Bill. Very interesting. Thank you. Clark. Hi there. Can't hear you. Stop.
Sorry, got it. Very much appreciate this. I wanted to say I was part of a white sheet grape eating community that decided that the use of the word is incentivized too much impunity and arrogance. And we are interested in exploring harmonious social relationships as a primary value. The use of is got in the way of connection, problem solving, decision making. It set up claims regarding states of affairs in such a reified fashion that we spend most of our time defending our own reifications than actually cooperating. What we learned is that the only real value of is its expedience, not its reliability of the claim accompanying its use. But the expedience didn't serve us except in situations, and they're very particular, situations that involved science, urgency, and danger. In all the interactions that required buy-in and participation, that is, to cooperate, the use of the word is became viewed as an authoritarian reach for social status. So I just wanted to share that. What we all ended up with was dissolution because we all became frantic about our need to solve problems together, and we reverted to using is. What did we do when we weren't using is? We were telling stories to each other. You can imagine a campfire. You can imagine, Aboriginal peoples. How did they share information? How did they share is? Like my friend that I already mentioned from the Micronesian Islands. They told stories to each other, and they had beginnings, middles, and ends, and they let that sit. And in many ways, in the hearer's understanding, and they were able to communicate and make agreements. Now, was that efficient according to our Western standards? Not at all. Did they invent science? No, they did not. But I'm just saying there are there are value questions here that are above and beyond even the philosophical, and it goes to the question of why. Why do we have languages that use it? And, you know, I think I looked this up a long time ago, and I might not be remembering it right, but if you look up the word copula, it's, I think, a linguistic term, and there's languages that can be divided into active copula and dynamic copula. And the dynamic copulas, I'm sorry, active copula. I'm sorry, static copulas and dynamic copulas. The static copulas are what we use in the English language. I think that's right. And so we memorialize, we immortalize, reify what we're saying to each other as a way of getting to somewhere. So it's very expedient oriented. It's very efficient.
No, not really. I do very few.
But the question is that efficiency purchased at too high a cost for human cooperation in society as mammals, social mammals? That's the question that interests me the most in this discussion. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Clark. Now I understand why you joined. You saw is and you realized that's a big thing. That's very, very interesting what you're telling us. You got rid of is, but you kept was and will be.
We actually focused on the whole form of to be, but is was the most problematic.
Yes.
And there are languages, there's groups of people, there's a name for it. I was trying to remember it. This is 20 years ago. But there's actually a word for the English language absent of the form of to be. So there's a language that's been named that doesn't use the form of to be. And I'm trying to remember what it is, and it's not coming up. I'll try to find it. But there's a lot of experimentation around this, particularly in community building, and how autocracy comes into our language, and we end up beating each other up, never coming to agreement because we realize we've reified something that doesn't exist. It's very inefficient in the end. So
thank you very much, Clark. Thank you very much.
Somebody mentioned it in the chat. It's E prime.
E prime, you're right. That's it. E prime. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Could somebody rewrite it in the chat?
Michael? I can't.
I just asked that somebody rewrite that word.
It's just the letter E and prime.
Michael, I can't see you, but your hand is up.
Yeah, it's Michael. I just want to add some like a simple comment.
Oh, it's another Michael. Michael, can you put your video on?
Me?
Good. No, I thought you were the other. Oh, fine. Good to see you.
It's me?
Fine.
It's Michael, right?
Yeah, great.
I just want to add some like a simple comment. Originally, I come from China. I speak Chinese, but I see kind of like a Chinese. We don't have future. We don't have past. We just have a moment. We just put like yesterday, tomorrow. That's we play the times. But if I look at like old Asian like Chinese, rarely we can see the is in the book. So I don't think we use is a lot. But I think based on kind of like the evolution, because language reflect our thinking. So the is kind of like human being, like we try to I think we dominated like a more know the world, I mean the nature. So the is like we make decision, it's kind of willpower. I say there are two reasons we say we cannot define the is. I think that the is something is everything or nothing, because first it's kind of like a limitation of human being understand the world. For example, like I say, this is a tree, but the human being cannot understand the tree directly. We have to project that tree by our eyes, by our touching to our projected material tree in our brain. Then we analyze this tree. And then based on that tree, so we have like because that tree created by our thought. And then based on that, we have another thought. to analyze that thought. It's kind of like a self-circle to do that. So it means we have different layers. It means like object layers, projection layers, and also imagination layers. So our thought, our communication, forget the language, is already cannot be defined because different person have different imagination. So this is like how the limitation human being understand the world. Whatever you communicate, it is obscure because we always the thought is to continue the self cycle. But second is I think it's because the alienation process, because the thought, our thinking can make the things alienated. For example, we say this is like a furniture in our home, but once 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, it's not only furniture, it's part of my home, So whatever is like based on individual subjectively, we bring our things. And based on the history, I think human being, as I return back the original say, so is still is our thought. It's not something else. It's just our thought, willpower. We want to make a decision. Because a lot of thought there, we want to communicate. We need to go straightforward. And also human being kind of like you can see, Western culture is probably kind of like it's I think it's kind of like the play very important role there. So it's play the word. So it's easy, it's more efficient, more quick to make decisions. It doesn't matter, it's real truth. It's kind of like we make the truth as we want. So is our thought, is nothing else. It's kind of like the willpower, a kind of Nietzsche said, it's just we want to make decision based on your power. If we don't have power, I know you don't have a right to say yes. That's it. I think it's not something so complicated. I think that's my point.
Thank you very much, Michael. Very interesting. Thank you. Thank you. Josh, you're back. Are you still running, still walking? I can't see you. Where is he? Josh? Is your hand? Your hand is up, right?
Hello. My hand is up. Yes. Yes. I was temporarily blinded by the sun.
We all are by the sun.
Yeah. So before, after I finished my comment, Ron, and then you said, "Well, look at all the how many times you use the word is in your conversation, even as you were trying to explain how the is can be understood instead in terms of the Heideggerian as structure." Now, my response would be, well, I use the word is in part because I'm trying to make myself understood within this group. Now, the question would be, well, would I use the word is less within another kind of community? And my answer is yes, depending on what that community is. If it's a community of others who are working on, say, the later Wittgenstein or Heidegger, I would use the word is less. And it wouldn't necessarily even be doing so much because my way of thinking would shift into a different register. I wouldn't need to use that word. So I think that conceivably, and it's been a point that has been raised by a number of different philosophers over the past 100 years, beginning with Nietzsche talking about how the structure of our grammar limits the way that we think about the world. What he meant specifically was the subject-predicate structure of our languages. I think that really is more significant, much more significant than whether a particular language uses the word is or not. So Hebrew doesn't use the word is. Does it use a subject-predicate structure? Oh, it certainly does. Formal language systems may use the word is. They may be, popular. But formal languages are themselves based on the subject-predicate structure. They're an outgrowth of how natural language evolved within a certain era. So it's interesting to look at how our thinking has evolved to some extent on the relationship between the use of the word is and the grammar of our languages, which rely on a kind of a propositional structure. A subject does something, right? It entitizes action into noun and verb. It forces us into a particular way of thinking of things, which isn't, and we end up being convinced that it's somehow fundamental when it's not. And I think that as our thinking shifts, we can conceivably get rid of the word is, not just in the way that it has been done in Hebrew, but also get rid of the underlying larger structure which makes it necessary. And that is, our subject predicate way of thinking. I mean, languages evolve all the time. Our use of gender pronouns and other aspects of language are changing. They're changing because the way we think about each other changes. And conceivably, the same thing will happen with the word is. And I don't think that, there's something more peculiar about, I think what misses the point to think that there's something more peculiar or striking about is as opposed to was. I think it's part of, you miss the point, which is it's a system within which is, was, and the past, present, and future are all thought in a certain way. Our attention may be drawn to the word is in a way that it isn't to other elements of our words that refer to time. But I think that you can't extract it from this larger system and understand its role. So that's basically what I want to say.
Okay, thank you, Josh. I am in great doubt that is will ever get rid of it. It's so basic in Indo-European languages that I can't see something like that. You can change vocabulary, but grammar is pretty fixed. But I mean, we'll have to meet again in about 50 years. Like, mind you, you'll still be walking.
That's right.
Thank you very much, Josh. Thank you, George.
It's fascinating when you think about science today versus the way the human mind works. So, for instance, in science, now people that study trees and plants, just to continue with this example, there are in fact no trees and plants in science in the scientific sense. What there's cellular biology. So, one of the fascinating things you see is that there are scientists that work on the cells of various plants that when you show them the plant itself, they can't even identify it, or they'll misidentify it. So it goes back to my point about science being about matter and energy. And, going back to something Ron said, that if you don't study the invisible, Ron, forgive me for being so blunt about it, then you're not engaging in philosophy. Because philosophy is why we, colloquially speaking, and in fact in everyday reality, we see a tree, we don't see cells, right? Why do we see what we see, right? And why do we ignore other issues, right? Why is it that people are motivated, for instance, by murder, right? Just by way of example, right? And so, science, there's been this, due to the the political and social prestige of science, there's been a very false effort to try to equate philosophy with science. Somehow philosophy can give us some insights into philosophy can give us insights into cellular philosophy, into cellular science, this and that. Very misguided. Philosophy is it's why the laws of physics exist, just by way of example. Is why is it that people are motivated by murder? Why is it that becomes a moral fact versus some other issues that are deemed very trivial, such as snapping a twig? So, to say to me that I only study as a philosopher what I can touch, feel, etc., is to tell me that you're no longer engaging in philosophy, right? And so again, the philosophical question is, why is a tree viewed as a tree? And why is it that we view things that are very dissimilar? Why do we still view them as trees? That's the philosophical question. The is matter, right? I mean, and again, I've already made my argument that what we're seeing is spirit, right? So we're seeing spirit of tree. And that's the way the mind operates, right? We don't see cells, we see trees. Science today only sees cells. It doesn't see plants, it doesn't see trees, it just sees cells. Thank you very much.
I don't even George, I don't even where to start on that. George, come back. I want to see your face. Come back, come back, come back. Where are you, George? George.
Sorry about that. Go ahead. Forgive me. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Let me put it this way. I disagree with everything you just said, obviously. And for you to say that scientists and philosophy sort of don't go together, you should have said that to Einstein, who said often and wrote often that he was inspired by philosophy. He was inspired by Hume, inspired by Schopenhauer, and he would not have got to his theories of relativity had it not been for the way he thought about philosophy and the way he knew that philosophers thought. So you cannot do what you just did. You can't. And Einstein is just one example. I can give you a list.
Can I give you a response? Can I have a response?
No, hang on. Wait in a minute. I can give you a list of physicists who are as interested in the philosophy of science as they are in the science as well. I can give you a list of scientists who moved to philosophy because they wanted to know what is, because what is the most important part of science and philosophy. Yes.
Well, I mean, you're not really answering the issue, but name dropping is not going to really move the debate.
Well,
but
sorry.
the truth, but let me say this: the fact is that just invokes Einstein, right? He felt that the answers to the world's problems were not found in science, but in philosophy. He said, "Love is the way, the philosophy of love." So he actually did bifurcate philosophy and science quite famously. If you know, and Einstein himself was a well-known socialist. So he in his own mind and his own politics did bifurcate science from philosophy. But the point is, again, the salient point is, if for someone to say, like you did, Ron, that I don't study the unreal in a manner of speaking, again, is to really basically say I'm not a philosopher.
Hang on. Again, I never said I don't study the unreal. I said there is no such thing as real.
Well, you said something quite differently before. You said you don't want to accept things that you can't touch, feel, and see. You said something in that vein of reasoning. You said that.
On the contrary, I said that what we can imagine is what we can imagine exists.
Okay. Well, I understand you said that as well, but you've said it. You know, when I said to you spirit, you said, "Oh no, I'm not gonna. If I can't get at it, so to speak, as you put it, there's no point in studying it."
I definitely don't go for spirits.
Definitely so my simple point is, and really more germane, really what I'm not interested, and I don't want to put you on the spot. That's but my simple point is, and I'm really responding to something that Terry said earlier, which he may no longer be here, which is that this notion that science is all encompassing of reality, right? And that is a dead end in terms of philosophical knowledge, because again, most, if not all of philosophy is about outside of science. Science is about the study of matter and energy. Philosophy is about morality. It's about ethics. It's about justice. It's about, again, why is it that we see the world the way we do, right? And really, Hegel's responding to this because, again, Hegel's living in the world of science. In other words, science is explaining trees not as tree but as cell. So again, Hegel's a response to this, and he's saying, really, what science tells us is that we're not seeing tree in a literal sense in the way that we conventionally understand, but we're seeing spirit of tree. And this is what motivates the human mind. This is what motivates language. This is what motivates is. Thank you very much.
Thank you, George. Thank you. Mark, go for it.
Am I coming in clearly?
Yep.
Okay, I'm traveling a bit. I'm parked now. But I wrote out my comment to say just very quickly. It should probably take 3 minutes. I tried to incorporate all the amazing comments. So here we go. The why of is must. Someone stated that in pragmatically thinking, there is always a subjective context of which interpretations occur, including for being, which makes it subjective and not certain, as you said being seems to be, Ron. But being has both senses of the word objective and subjective, where epistemology and ontology collapse into one. The truth operates by understanding the right order of the senses of absolute definitions. You cannot arrive at the true objective sense of being in itself if the notion of absence exists. The mistake is that you can't have an absence of everything, because true absence can only exist in opposite to existence. So if we have the absence of everything, it means even the absence of absence must be somehow absent or present. But the absence of absence is not nothing or nothingness, but indeterminacy. Nothingness repeats the mistake you point out, Ron, of people who do not realize nothing is the opposite of something, and so not true nothingness. But now, nothingness is in opposition to existence, and not the true nothingness, which is actually indeterminacy, which is neither noun or verb, but both implicitly, simultaneously. It's the first true non-dual moment that is elements. Indeterminacy is less than nothing, but in such a way that less does not exist because we negated all quantity and everything, including negation itself. We also negate all contingencies of subjectivity, including the I am, because you're right, Ron, the I am is not immediate or indeterminate, except in spirit, in the spirit sense, like George stated. But this is only another form of being, as epistemology later on. When we negate all, including negation, we arrive at somewhere that is nowhere and can't be said anything about because it is less than nowhere. But because we already negated absolutely all, we, which I mean being itself, are certain, not approximate, that this indeterminacy is all there is because there is nothing else. If there were, we would negate it too. But in truth, it is not we who are certain because we are negated, but it is the self-certainty of indeterminacy to itself that is certain intrinsically. This immediate self-relation does not apply to anything. It's not even a relation. It is not an application. It applies only to itself because it is itself. And this spontaneity of the most general indescribable is what we colloquially call pure being and also presence. So I just have a little bit more here. I'm just trying to touch everybody's points who wanted to know about presence, the why. This pure being is not a being of something like a subjective reflection, but is its own object thinking itself, which is immediate being itself, in two forms of indeterminacy, which when it negates itself, it turns into determinacy. And so being comes into being certainly in these negations, which are not external, but inward and immanent in all of these determinations. And this is the objective dialectic of entities that are categories. So we had the subjective dialectic, this is the objective. And since they are the only beings, they can't be otherwise. There are no other beings which they could be because nothing else exists. And so they are necessary. And this is what logic is in itself, thinking itself. Not of human minds, but in the spontaneity which is conceptual life. The negation of this certainty as a whole creates a second spontaneity, which is the implicit being of nature, which allows our finite subjective thinking to use logic without necessarily aligning with objective logic, which is why grammar, as sensuous logic, does not have to operate in syllogisms, and saying that some languages don't have a category for being explicitly, because the thinking explication of it in word or symbol doesn't have to be present, even though it or is being. But it can know it because scientific empiricism or subjective dialectic now, we said objective dialectic earlier, now we're talking about the subjective dialectical sense, which is what modern scientists and secularists usually talk about. The reason why it can know anything is because it is a correspondence of thinking which aligns with the logical being, which is the concrete truth in the material world. And when this happens, thinking transmutes from subjective dialectic to speculative non-duality again as certainty that is being simultaneously. This is what George means by spirit. Gödel's theorem is not spirit, but is subjective dialectic proving its own contingency in finite logic and not in true being. In this way, it can only end up in the emptiness of unsubstantial becoming, which is emptiness and not substantial being. The truth of being is simple and qualitative as wisdom, which is thinking which is one with being, and being which is one with thinking. Such is the nature of spirit, which is wisdom in both modes simultaneously in both senses. This is, capital IS, the universal story of being. So I hope that sums up all the amazing comments in some kind of coherence. But thanks for letting me say that kind of quickly. I appreciate it, Ron. These are great sessions.
Thank you, Mark. What is in everything you just said?
Is indeterminacy.
It is what? So is not is.
Yeah, it is and not is. You can't say what it is because it's no comparison.
Here we go.
It's left in those categories.
But this is the problem with Hegel. It's exactly it. Because you do and you don't at the same time, all the way through. This is this and this is not this, and you put them together and you get another is, and that is not is because it's this is my problem with it, and I hope you don't mind my telling you this, because either is or it's not is. It can't be is and not is.
Let me correct. Let me correct. Formal is the immediate beingness of it. It's not both in that moment, but formally it is only the immediate moment of indeterminacy. But when indeterminacy tries to be that immediacy, it turns automatically into its opposite. So you can say they're different and the same at the exact same time, a second level of duality happening on top of duality. So formally, you're right. Pure being is just the immediate moment of indeterminacy, and that solves that problem.
It solves a problem that is and is not are not at the same time. So yeah. It's not a contradiction. It's not. Let's say
formally it isn't. Formally it isn't, but it's always a contradiction, truly. But yeah, formally, to begin the logic, you can start with immediate indeterminacy, which then negates itself by being itself, negates itself imminently into pure nothing.
At the same time.
It's the same time, but formally it's dual.
What do you mean?
It's the non-dual of non-duality and duality.
What do you mean by formally?
It means one-sided. That means you cut out pieces so that you can at least have some kind of determinacy that you can start with. And the first determinacy that you start with is indeterminacy, which is also another contradiction. But it's the formless form. It's the only true form that has no other form that's dependent on it. Or it's not dependent on it. All other forms are dependent on it. So what we're tossing with here is the non-duality of not duality. That's still a duality. We're looking at the non-duality of
is duality and not duality.
And that's the hard part.
Could I say something maybe? Could I say something?
Formally it is not duality and
I have as you may know, and you won't like me for this, but you will. I'm not sure about George will like me for this, though. That I have a tremendous problem with Hegel, but tremendous, because
Can I say something?
Hang on, who? George?
Yes.
No, hang on. I want to get you really angry. Hang on.
Okay, go ahead.
I have a huge problem with Hegel, because there's a stream of words that come out, and the stream of words always fit into something that needs to be said, and has nothing to do with anything apart from things being opposite to each other, and then make something else, and that is okay, but that's not really it, because it's something else. I personally have a problem with that, but I am only me. So and Hegel has a lot of fans. So I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised, because Hegel is always right. Always. I've never heard anybody say that Hegel is wrong. If I say, for example, that Hegel makes no distinction between nothing and nothingness, then I'm met with a whole stream of something telling me, well, actually he does and he doesn't need to, and they both come together. But that's just me. I'm very prejudiced against that. But that's just me. I'm not right. I'm just giving my opinion.
Let me say this. And Mark touched upon something that was important, which is the one-sidedness of is. Okay, the one-sidedness of is. So we look at a car, and you'll say, okay, that's a car. That is a car. Well, you're only pulling on one side of that, right? Because that also is an object with four wheels. There's a carburetor. So anytime you are using the word is,
I agree.
by definition, it's one-sided. So you're
No.
looking at a tree, you say that is a tree. It's one-sided because that tree was a sapling, and then tomorrow it'll be something else. So it's always, the mind can only draw on a one-sided spirit at a time. The universal of things is impossible to think about because it is. You cannot think about a car and at the same exact time think about a carburetor or now fuel injection. Right?
I said from the very, very beginning that is complicated, and it's not just one thing. I said it all the way through from the first minute.
But this is the point. Hegel helps us to unpack that complication. So instead of saying it's complicated and leaving it at that, Hegel allows us to see
anything we want
and the vectors of complication.
No, Ron, it seems like it's anything we want, but the formality does have a right order and a right way to think about it.
I don't understand what I'm sorry. My brain is just not big enough to understand Hegel. I try. I used to like him, and now I'm very, very disillusioned. But I'm not right. I mean, how can I be right? But Hegel is right. This is what bothers me. You're both saying that Hegel is right. Correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's it then. If he's right, there's nothing else to say.
You're not showing why he's wrong is the problem.
No, May I just add a very, very small comment?
Yes, it's your turn. Jyoti, yes.
Okay.
Thank
I didn't realize it was my
Thank
turn.
you very much, Mark.
But at that moment, in that place, in that physical body that you are, when you say is, it is. So it's almost like, if you go into the Buddhist tradition or the Hindu tradition, that it's that moment that we're all, the universality moment that we're all, I mean, in the US, we call it present moment, but where everything combines.
Okay.
So it's, and when everything combines, it's just that particular being's reality at that time.
At that time is problematic.
So we're combining time, body, spirit, and gosh, what's the third? What's the fourth form of existence?
Yes.
I have to go back to my chat, but I think understand what I'm saying. Does anybody help? Please, somebody say yes.
It's okay.
Somebody say Jyoti.
You're doing very well. No, you're doing very well. My only problem with that is at that time is a problem for me.
At that time for that particular observer, so it's very subjective.
Okay.
It's not about the object, it's about the subject at that time, in that place, in that body and mindset that they are in. So like if you look at the child development aspect, and I try to put this in the chat, is there's a huge difference between when a baby first starts to speak and goes refers to, it's a huge step when they say I am Jyoti. There's an versus this is Jyoti or this is glass. So I agreed with David about the willpower development. When you have some kind of agency and will, then is very powerful. Or I mean, it takes to getting to that point to use is. Anyhow.
Okay, it's fair enough. Thank you very much. Are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much, Jyoti. No, you're doing well. I understand what you're saying. I only have the problem with at that time, because at that time then takes time. So that
but that's what I'm trying to say, that it's what I'm putting myself into the European paradigm, but it's that moment where everything combines. So time is even time, you know, it's like right now I'm seeing you, and but by the time I say it, it's past.
Yeah.
However, when I do see you and I don't know how to explain present moment, but like it's because the English language is lacking.
No, no, the whole concept of the present is lacking as far as I'm concerned.
Well, exactly.
In every language, as far as I'm concerned. But
what is it that people aspire for when they say present moment?
It's a non-existent time that they think they're in, but it's gone. It's gone before they can even think about it. It's gone. It's the past.
But see, you haven't lived all the life cycles to get there. That's where Buddha was.
I'm trying to get through the first Sunday of the month, basically.
Exactly.
Still,
I was just trying to add some
alive.
humor to this very. I was just trying to add some humor to this very, very serious conversation.
Thank you
Thank
very
you so
much
much for this, by the way.
I hope I see you next time again.
Yes, I hope I am here and existing next time.
Yeah, we all do. Thank you very much, Michael.
Yeah, I nearly took my hand down. The long intervention of Mark for me was, I mean, I might have read it. I certainly couldn't listen to it because it was either beyond my level of education, which it certainly was, and also, I mean, I think that language has different rules when it's spoken and when it's written. And in this kind of meeting, I think we should use spoken language and try and be as simple as we can. Very abstract things can be said using simple words. So I was a bit bothered by that. The only reason I raised my hand was I couldn't believe that we had this discussion without pointing out that in Spanish, the verb to be, there's ser and estar, which is a wonderful difference that nobody mentioned. So I just also want to say that in Japan, they only use blue and they don't use green. In other words, when it's red, stop the car. When it's blue, you can go. In other words, more deeply, I think that this activity we call philosophy is just trying to get along with the fact that we have a consciousness that there's something called reality, that something is very strange, that we have something called consciousness, which is even stranger, that on top of it, each one of you and I'm part of you, we think that I am me. And I think philosophy is trying to deal with those problems as well as it can, be it epistemology, be it logic, be it whatever. I think it's in a way less complicated and in a way more complicated than what I was hearing today, but I loved the discussion, and that's all I believe I wanted to say. No, I think that's it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you. Thank you. Terry.
George, have you seen any American camels lately?
I'm sorry, say again, forgive me?
Have you seen any American camels lately?
I'm not sure what you're asking me, forgive me. Are camels not American? Why aren't they American? Are they Egyptian? Why? What does that mean?
Have you seen any llamas or alpacas lately?
Yes.
Did you realize they're American camels?
I'm not sure what your question is. What are you getting at?
Because science looks at animals in terms of grouping and taxonomies and creating larger groups. It's actually one of the most extensive efforts right now. So what you call spirit would actually be one of the major topics of science, trying to find groups that cross entire categories that we may have missed, may have not seen that. I wouldn't use the term spirit, but to say that science goes only down the cellular level, if anything, right now, I think the efforts are more in the opposite direction of trying to find huge groupings and similarities and again, what you would call spirits that are where there's something in common. And I like the American camel one just because if you say that, most people just immediately do as you did and just kind of go like, what? But the fact is we have them, but we didn't name them that way. So we miss the fact that there's a common spirit between those because of our language. We kind of threw ourselves off a little bit with that. The other comment I was going to make is just that you and Mark both keep saying these odd things, to me very odd, because I've been in science for literally most of my life. You keep talking about this dialectical something or other. It ain't there. I'm sorry. You can call it what you want. Nobody in science talks that way. Nobody talks about this either or. It's just not there. So, I mean, you may be getting it from, is it from the Marxist side? I don't know where it's coming from. But
well, let me stop you there. Certainly science speaks of ecology, correct?
I'm saying these specific terms of dialectic.
That's irrelevant. Whether it's, I mean, again, they use the word ecology. Philosophers use the word dialectic. That's the only issue. It's the same thing.
Well, say it again. I didn't quite catch what you said.
Philosophers use the word dialectic. Scientists use the word ecology. It's the same thing.
The ecology?
Yes.
Okay. Well,
I mean, you understand what that means, right?
I'm more in the hard sciences, and I haven't done much work on ecology, but I don't recall. Yeah, well, okay. And the other one is, and I think Ron and others can attest to me. You did suggest that I'm trying to reduce the entire world to science. Oh gosh, I think there are others in the group who would support me in saying that if anything, I've been the opposite in this group, pointing out, for instance, that PhD means doctorate of philosophy, and that philosophy is what drives many of these things. So I think it would be
you tried to put forward a definition of science as empiricism, the provable, this and that, and that then raises to the level of philosophy.
Yeah, for the scientific method, you have to, but the whole point is that you realize your limits. I would put that the other way around. That's science being modest and say that's all we can do. You know, is if you do testability, this recent superconductor, people did tests, they verified, they said, nope, didn't work. It's still interesting, by the way. But that's the scientific method is. It's about saying, okay, it didn't work. We got to be humble about it. We don't know why it didn't work, something like that. So if anything, I think that's a humbling statement, not a grandiose one, saying that, yeah, all science can do is that. And to me, there's this whole huge domain that Ron gets into in his books and discussions in these groups about what in the heck are we really doing? Because if you rely totally on science, you ain't going to get it, because science doesn't have the answers to it. So I would disagree with my characterization that I am trying to reduce everything to scientific materialism, because I define science so narrowly. Because I'm saying, like, no, it's not enough. So,
fine, I stand corrected. Then I misunderstood your point. Thank you.
Well, that's why I was trying. I can easily understand, because we all have our certain images of how people are probably going to talk from a certain viewpoint, and I am not. There are many people in science who would talk exactly as you thought I was saying. So that's not uncommon. I mean, it's not uncommon. I'm probably a little bit of an outlier in some of those points. I certainly am much more emphasizing philosophy than would most scientists, but that's just school of hard knocks. Some of the things I look at are just so many of the assumptions we make, and so the arrogant assumptions that science makes about, oh yes, this is what it is. Some of it's just nonsense. Some of it's just nonsense. I give you just a little hint of that when I said before, this quantum field theory. It's got aspects of precision that are not merited by actual physical universe, that they're two different issues. And you need to be very careful, because you slip into one or the other and starts making all these grandiose statements again. And saying that all waves are perfect is just as grandiose as saying all particles are perfect. There's really not much difference mathematically. So I think science needs a huge dose of humility. So I don't understand all of your terminology, but I get the idea of what you're saying about the spirit, that there's groupings, and I'm saying that science is not adverse to that. I think that trying to reduce everything to atoms, there are variants of science that does that, but those are the ones that also have led us into some of the paradoxes and some of the, frankly, stupidities that we've gotten into. So a lot more humility is good. That's all.
Can I add? Can I barge in? Just thanks. Just to add on to what Terry said about science, I think when we're talking about scientific knowledge, we're talking about the method, which is special and distinct from any other way of getting or reaching true knowledge. And what is true knowledge? That's of course the problem, but I think that the scientific method is the best method we have. It's not foolproof. We get it wrong, but so the idea is to try and make that method as the best we can. And this, I think, is the difference between different kinds of ways to reach knowledge, to reach truth. We don't have any other way. And the scientific method, when we get to rubbish, or we get to different ideas, we would want to say that something went wrong in the method. Not that we got to some sort of a false belief, but the false belief is leans on something which was fault in the way that the method was conducted. And of course, there are so many criteria on what is a scientific the scientific rule or law or research. So we've got lots of rules for what a good research is and what it needs to include. So I think I agree with you, George, that there are places where perhaps we can't explain with science, and I think that doesn't mean much apart from, is it true science, or could we base our knowledge on that? So if you believe in scientific and rational thought, I would base on that. And if not, that would be a belief. That would remain a belief. That would remain something which is not true.
Wait. Just may I just say one thing really quickly? Very, very quick. Thank you so much for speaking. I don't know the name of the person, but I disagree with a lot of what you said, but you're the only other woman that spoke. Thank you.
Yeah.
But not that many here. Yeah.
I'm gonna say this, okay. You're misunderstanding, Debbie, empiricism for the scientific method. Indeed, the truth is that most physicists, etc., don't use, I'm not sure exactly what you mean by the scientific method, but in science, there is no one method, right? Even in the physical sciences, there is no one method. Again, you're conflating empiricism and the scientific method. Now, philosophers, I concur, we have to be empiricists, okay? So as a philosopher, I see gravity, the field of gravity, okay? The scientists, if we're going to take scientists, it depends. See, if we're going to take Ron's conception of empiricism, then gravity doesn't exist. We just see objects falling, and that's all we see. We can't get it to why, even speculatively, right? So, again, the philosopher says people see tree, okay? The scientist says, look, it's not, certain scientists at least will say, no, it's not tree, it's cells, okay? And that's true, it is cells in a strict empirical way. So in a strict empirical way, there is no such thing as tree, because every single object that we would describe as tree is different. So there is no tree, right? The physical scientist is closer to the claim that you're looking at cells, okay? But even cells are different from one another. The question for the philosopher is, why do we see tree, right? Why do we see rock? Why is it that we see the world the way we see it, right? I mean, to say that the physical scientist can come in or the analytic philosopher can come in and say, okay, look, we can see this differently if we really wanted to. That's not relevant. The relevant point is, why is it that we use the word is? Why is it that we see tree, right? That's the philosophical question. That's the empirical reality that the philosopher deals with. And again, the philosopher says, in my mind, the philosopher says, what we see is the spirit of tree or the spirit of rock. That's the way the mind actually works. It's not to say, oh, it's wrong, or it misunderstands, or there's really another way to see the world. Okay, the question that confronts us as philosophers is, why do we see tree, even though these objects that we identify as tree are nothing alike? And mind you, it's not a cultural phenomenon. Everyone throughout the world sees tree, right? And so again, that's the philosophical question. It's anti-intellectual to say in my mind, oh, I'm not going to accept spirit. Because again, it's just, you're just denying reality. It's just, the same way you're saying, I don't see gravity, I see rocks falling, you're being anti-intellectual to say, gravity doesn't exist. That's the same position philosophically you're taking. So again, we can distinguish between the scientific method and scientific reasoning versus empiricism. Again, we should all be empiricists. Science is something that's done, again, science is what the scientist says it is. I'm classifying llamas. That's my science, okay? I'm looking at the cell structure of llamas, okay? But again, that's even philosophical, right? What is science in certain instances? Right. Thank you very much.
George, I'm gonna everybody. I hope it's okay if I interject. First, Debbie, thank you for your comments. Really appreciated it. I would moderate one point is, scientists don't look for truth; they look for repeatability. So it's even more modest than that. That we wouldn't say, no, this is not some kind of great truth. We do look for repeatability. That has some benefits. The very fact we're having this conversation is a direct result of it, because otherwise none of this technology would exist. But it's still important to humble it that as soon as you say truth, we want to be a little careful on how much we state science to be. George, you probably don't know anything about my background, but artificial intelligence is my main focus for the last long time, as well as hard sciences. And as I've talked to Juan sometimes, that you might call that experimental philosophy in some ways, because that science doesn't look at those potatoes of artificial intelligence is, how do we understand what the groups are, what things mean something, why does something mean this way, when do you get a false meaning for that? So it's a fascinating area, and it does not treat the world as if it's some super simple bunch of atoms going around. If anything, it's kind of the opposite direction, saying, where does all this stuff emerge from? So I would say there's some parts of science, in particular artificial intelligence, where there's a lot more contemplation of some of these issues than you might think. So here, that's enough. That's enough for me.
I'll say this.
Wait, hold on,
Go ahead.
before you go, I just want to emphasize that this is gosh, how do I put it? Like participatory discussion, and I would very much appreciate it if everybody was, and I know we all have our very strong beliefs, but I would very much appreciate it if everybody was kind to each other. Thank you.
Terry, the only thing I'll say to you is that even what constitutes science, I mean, I said this, is a philosophical question, right? And again, so there's that, again, it's like, is it cell research? Is it this, what you're doing? So even again, philosophy, again, this idea that science can explain the world, and I know you're not advocating that, right? Or looking at material reality, that's what science is. Even that is going to be contentious. And again, it still requires philosophy. That's my only point. I'm not trying to argue, I'm not trying to put science in a box. However, I will respond negatively to the idea of saying, oh, well, we need to look at the world through the scientific method, as if somehow science is a privileged mode of knowledge. Thank you very much.
No, I never claimed that philosophy is not important to discovering and doing inquiries about the world. Not at all. I'm actually saying, my point is that science needed philosophy to give the structure, the methodology, to show how it is rational and what is the reasoning that ought to be a basis for inquiry. So, for example, just thinking that something, or just looking up in the sky and assuming that that is how it is, we're assuming that there's a whole way of asking questions, a whole way of a different method of getting to these not to a knowledge, to an explanation about the world. And I agree, Terry, truth is not, it's not about truth, but it's about trying to explain the world in the best way that we can, and that can explain most phenomena which we can, which we experience in the best way, and to get the best answers to that. And the reason is that scientific method is, according to me, the best method there is because there were years and years and thousands of years of philosophical thinking, of reasoning, of getting to what is the most rational, the most valid, reasonable way to get to conclusions about the world. And you've got Hume with the problem of induction, and which exactly does show, and Hume did point to the exact points which are not there to be seen, are not empiricists. I mean, if I throw it like George has said, the law of gravity, if I throw a ball and it falls down many, many times, then I can get to a law. But why? The reason is not there. We cannot see reasons. We can just see repetition. And this is exactly where where philosophy enters, to explain why it is valid or not, we're skeptic or not, about using that sort of methodology. I think that I'm clearer now.
I just want to say that I'm surprised that people keep on mentioning things dropping and why they drop, and etc. etc. And as if science does not try to explain it, and it does, and it's a huge question mark. I mean, and it was attempted very, very nicely by Einstein's general theory of relativity, and the fact that it's mentioned here that we just see things drop and we don't know what gravity is, and that's it. No, that's not it. That scientists are trying to find out what gravity is, what it is, and that's been the subject of today's talk. What something is, and for people to say that there is the reality, i.e. that we're going to actually get to it, that for me is really, really strange. Because if there is epistemological view of the world, which is mine, it would mean that we will never get to a point where we will know what everything is. It cannot be. We would not be human if we ever reach that stage, and we're not going to reach that stage. And as Debbie said, and as Terry said, that scientists and philosophers are trying to find the best explanations that there are. And those explanations change. And 100 years ago, we had different explanations, and they were true at the time for them. And to say that now we know about spirits of trees, and that's true, it obviously isn't, because in another 100 years, they will look back and say, people talked about spirits in trees, they were nuts. we have to not be arrogant and say that we know what there is today, because that is arrogance. What is going to happen is that what is true today will not be true tomorrow, and we have to be big enough to admit that all we're doing is trying to find the best explanations. That's it. And we're going to keep on trying, and we're going to keep on disagreeing. And not one single person is right, not even Hegel. Not one single person is right and correct and has got it, hasn't got it, can't get it. We never will. And we will try, and we'll keep on meeting here on the first Sunday a month, and we will try to find it, and we will try again and again and again. And that's
You're mischaracterizing the argument,
and
Ron.
that's
You're mischaracterizing the argument.
And that is
mischaracterizing it.
And that is the beauty of being able to discuss it, which I'm very happy about. I'm very happy that George made his comments. I like them very, very much. But we disagree, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. We both have the best way of thinking of how things might be, not are, might be. But that is the is. So wait a minute, Josh, sorry, Josh has been waiting a long time. He's still walking, most probably. George, is still walking? Oh, he stopped. No, he hasn't.
I started doing a little flying. I wanted to vary my work on a little bit. So my spirit has been lifted, and I suddenly found myself floating over the trees. Anyway, but there is a physicist and philosopher by the name of Karen Barad, who for 30 years has been working on an approach which has become rather more popular these days. The larger category is called the new materialism, as opposed to the old materialism. The old materialism, as perhaps one might find it in physics and other natural sciences, as well as among the general public, is this notion that there are objects floating around there that out in the world, and they interact and cause changes in each other, but that the objects pre-exist the interactions. Now, Karen Barad wrote on, in particular, on the results of the famous double slit experiment in quantum field theory. And she noted that the interpretation of the results, where you shoot a particle through one of these slits and you're trying to figure out to predict which side it's going to come out of, or something like that. Anyway, so she was fascinated in the difference in the interpretation between Heisenberg, Bohr, and Einstein. Now, Bohr's interpretation was an interesting one. He said that there are no particles, there are only phenomena. And the phenomena are created, they're a product of the apparatus which is used. So depending on how we set up the apparatus, that'll determine the result of the experiment. Now, Karen Barad sort of took this notion, and she sort of she updated it. She said an apparatus is not some fixed thing that people build, some measuring device or whatever, and then we determine our measurements on the basis of this fixed device that we set up. But an apparatus is a set of practices. So an apparatus, you can think of it differently, is a kind of an arrangement of interactions. And so her argument was this, is there is no such thing as a particle, an element, an entity anywhere in the universe that pre-exists its interactions with other entities. So she calls it intra-action rather than interaction. Nothing pre-exists. The interactions produce what we then call particles. She went further than this, and she said that the kind of distinctions that we tend to make between human discursive activity, conceptual activity of the scientist, for example, that is modeling these phenomena, are a part of the phenomena themselves. That is to say, materiality is intra-action. That is to say, it is apparatuses. That is to say, it is organizations of practices among that produce materiality, and human beings are all belong to that. We are material entities also, but again, while we're not entities, there are no entities. We are material interactions. So our understanding of the world around us is essentially one part of the world making itself intelligible to another part. So this allows us to shift our perspective away from the notion of the knower conceptualizing the known world. It changes our way of understanding the is, because there are no is in the sense of entities. There are interactions which produce, which enact patterns of change. And that's what we think about when we talk about meaning, meaningful existences. So it goes in the wrong direction to try and dig back and to ground the nature of things within spirits or within anything which is transcendent to them, because there is nothing transcendent to the interactions. It's about looking at our relation to the rest of the world and the world's relationship to itself in terms of becomings, in terms of continuous changes, patterns and changes in patterns. So so it's a kind of a groundless ground, which doesn't mean that so understanding intelligibility is a matter of having a way of being able to anticipate, to have an anticipative way of engaging with and participating in the enaction of changes in the world. So this puts philosophy and science on the same footing. It's not that philosophy deals with non-material entities and all this materiality, and materiality is nothing but interactions that are among agential systems.
We'll walk around a little bit and we'll get something to eat.
Then you don't have the issue of looking at an is as something which exists on top of or before or beyond or transcendent to or grounding other kinds of phenomena which then depend on it in the sense of, so many of the terms that have traditionally been used to talk about what knowledge is about, what scientific knowledge is about, representation, formalism, it presupposes, that we're trying to correctly model something which pre-exists our engagement with it. Whereas this is where the notion of a kind of a radical pragmatism comes in. The pragmatism that Karen Barad, other new materialists and activists within cognitive science, and those within many other fields are now moving towards, which is a world of performing changes and getting meaning from, from that. So scientific, it was mentioned earlier that science is about repeatability, but it's repeatability within some sort of scheme of intelligibility. And when those schemes of intelligibility change, which is really, that's the creative work in science, as well as within philosophy, this is what marries the two together. They're both in the same business of coming up with schemes of intelligibility and then finding meaning in the relationships that they create, that they construct within those schemes, and then playfully experimenting with all alternative schemes, switch the framework, and then everything changes. And it's not about using that to come up with the very deepest, most fundamental, most true beginnings. It's really the opposite, is that you're getting further and further away from any kind of a notion of a beginning. It's more of an on-the-fly, ongoing way of watching how our attempts to change the world, understand the world around us, changes it. Those changes reflect back on us and change us. And so you get this reciprocal transformation that takes place between us as the knower and the world around us. So that's a non-ending process, and it doesn't.
Is. Thank you very much, Josh. There are a lot of is there, but thank you very much.
It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be anymore.
Well,
we freed ourselves from it.
I would like that very much. Thank you very much. Thank you, Michael.
Yes, thanks. I see sometimes, the answer will create the questions. it seems kind of like, I think in the Western culture, we really jump to the answers. Always we look for the answer, meaning. I think this kind of like wisdom of like, but we drop in the wisdom. But what I want to say is, if we kind of like, we talk about the question, because when we answer the question, we need to understand the question, the scope is fixed, which is unfixed. So if kind of we talk about like material world, I mean, I think it's kind of a fixed, like, even we cannot touch whole elephant, but still we brainstorming, we can approach that thing. It makes sense. But if it's not like scope is fixed, kind of like today we discussed like is being kind of like combine the material and immaterial together. I mean, we never can get it because the scope is changing. It's like we have 5 people, we have 5 universe, right? We bring another person, we have 6. The total is all changing based on human beings. So I think the scientific is more closely to the like material things exist. Its scope is fixed. We try to use it to understand the outside world because we cannot understand the material world by direct, I say by direct touching, direct understanding, because we always by the projection, indirect understand the world. But the human being is not always rely on the like scientific, because we in fact, we living in our immaterial world because everything is by our thought create that. And then we create kind of like how we think about our thoughts is kind of really self-game between me and me. And then we try to make the, the question answer. And our question answer come from us. But what says kind of, if it's kind of like immaterial kind of like questions, it's really based on individual because different people have different experience. We couldn't kind of align together, have common answer. Because you experience world is totally different from mine. I mean, whatever you say is right. I don't agree with you because my experience is different from you. But if it's kind of like scope is material thing, we talk about the tree, talk about the gravity, we talk about something already exists. Yes, we could talk because we can approach the answers. But if we talk about the kind of like, being, happiness, whatever, it's based on individual experience. That's not a part of the common thing. It's really based, it's kind of like you need to bring your state to be being that state. It's not a kind of you can get answer from another person, So because you need to bring you are the happiness. In fact, you are the happiness. So you couldn't let the people say, okay, can you tell me what's the happiness? You never can get it. So we need to put the question in a different scope. If the scope is material things fixed, we can talk. If the question is immaterial, the scope is dynamic, it doesn't matter the answer because it's not like a you answer. It's based on kind of like individual experience, interpretation. That's a human being is because we have body material, but we have brain because we create everything. Even when I'm so sorry that God is created by human beings. So spiritual is another kind of level. It means your life is spiritual is more important. The material world, your material world is more important than the spiritual world. It's personal decision, but finally is how you can use philosophy with psychological tools can make your life better. I think that's the human being care. It doesn't matter if it's true or not true. In fact, true doesn't exist. So that's my comment.
Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you. Thank you.
What I want to thank you. What I want to comment on is the thinking about again the position you're putting forward, Ron, and it's not simply the position you put forward. It's a position again of again analytic philosophers, many people who ascribe themselves as scientists. The idea that you believe in the spirit of gravity, but you don't believe in the spirit of tree. I assume you believe in the spirit of happiness. You believe in the spirit of the will to survive, right? I mean, in other words, these are things that exist. They manifest themselves empirically, but you don't touch them, you don't feel them, right? So again, to me, in the end, what I'm really focused on and fascinated by is the sheer arbitrariness of there are things that you believe in that you can't touch and you can't feel. You just simply see empirical manifestations of it, and you say, aha, gravity. But yet you see spirit of tree. No, spirit of tree doesn't exist. So I don't really understand that unless it's just a willful ignorance, just a willful dogma. It's not rational. It's not logical. I don't understand that bifurcation. In the end, that's simply what I want to put out there, because there's lots of things, Ron, that even the notion of is, right? There's lots of things that you believe in, that you can't touch and you can't feel. You just simply see empirical manifestations of it, and you say, aha, gravity. But yet you see spirit of tree. No, spirit of tree doesn't exist. So I don't really understand that unless, it's just a willful ignorance, just a willful dogma. It's not rational. It's not logical. I don't understand that bifurcation. In the end, that's simply what I want to put out there, because there's lots of things, Ron, that even the notion of is, right? we're talking about something that does not exist physically, but yet we're talking about it. We're committing a lot of discussion to is, right? Why is it that you believe some things that you can't touch and you can't feel, etc., so forth, but you believe some things, but you don't believe others?
You keep on talking about things I believe. I never mentioned the word believe once.
But you act as if you believe them.
Well, I can't help the way I act.
Okay.
What do you mean? I believe in gravity. I don't believe in gravity. I know that gravity is there.
Okay.
I know that it's explained by scientists, and they're trying to.
Okay.
They're trying to, and we all know that things drop, and we all know there are trees, but we do not know what reality is. We do not know what gravity is.
The question I have for you, Ron, is why do you accept the spirit of gravity but don't accept the spirit of tree?
You're putting words in my mouth. What is the spirit?
May I interrupt? Ron and George. Can we please go back to the discussion of is?
No, but hold on. No, this is very important. This is about is
versus science.
This is about is. Why is gravity?
Is this about is?
No, but why is gravity? But why is not spirit of gravity? Why is spirit of gravity? But why is not spirit of tree?
You keep on talking to me about spirits as if I believe in a spirit of anything. I don't.
You believe in the spirit of gravity?
No, I don't. No,
you do because you cannot touch gravity. You cannot see gravity, but yet you believe it.
No, I don't believe in the spirit of
anything.
I don't believe in spirits of any kind.
You do believe in the spirit of gravity, Ron.
Don't tell me what I believe in.
Let me say this to you. Forgive me. Hold on, please. This is very important.
Okay.
Hold on,
Hello,
please.
George and Ron.
Please.
Hold on.
No, you hold on. This is a discussion. You can't touch gravity.
One second, George,
gravity.
Please.
You can't see it, but you believe it, Ron.
No, George, I think the key question is
Michael, thank you. Michael, go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the key question, George, for you is why we need to believe. That means this is a tree. Why we need to believe the tree? So believe is another question of like a feeling question. So
wait a second, Michael.
Yeah.
The fact is that if we're going to take this purely empirically, there is no such thing as tree, right? There's no empirically. Everything that we identify as tree is different from one another. The dimensions, etc.
Yeah, I agree with you in the word. Yeah, let me explain to you. I agree with you in the layer of like we project the material thing, but that projection is come from tree material thing reflect to our projection. That means it materially exists, but something you project is based on nothing. That means it doesn't exist. That's a big difference. And also the second question, you say you want to believe something. Believe is another question. It's now based on the fact. Fact is this is tree. It doesn't matter believe or not believe. It's a tree. But you believe kind of like a question of the feeling.
Wait a second. Let me stop you. You said it is a tree. I'm really fascinated to understand why you would make that claim.
Why would you not make that claim? I don't understand.
Because you use the word tree, singular, right? However, there are no two objects in the world that are the same.
George, if I may, George, in Paris is a museum, and in that museum there is a boat, which was made 5,000-6,000 years ago, and all I can tell you is that if we put it in water, it would float. Now, we don't have so many objects that can both burn in winter to make heat, and that float so that we can make a boat out of them. So I suggest that we believe in the fact that some objects both float and burn, so they're made out of a specific material, which, we could call it wood, and we can say all things that make wood, let's give them a name.
But let me stop you right there, because by definition, there are some trees. Hold on, please. Let me respond to your point. There are some trees you can make a boat with. There are other trees you cannot. There's notorious. There are woods that you cannot make a boat out.
Okay, those
right?
are bad trees.
Hang on.
They're just bad trees.
Hang on. Your explanation, George, is that there is a spirit of a tree, and that is a fact. And that is the end of your story. It is a fact. That's your word. It is a fact.
Yeah.
That's the end. Well, that doesn't make sense to me at all. By saying that it's a fact doesn't make it a fact. I don't know what a fact is.
Okay,
And
let me
you're
say
saying
this.
no. You're saying that a fact is a spirit.
Okay, let me finish my thought and respond to you. Gravity is, right? You accept gravity as a fact. No? Yes or no? You do accept gravity as a fact. So you speak this again. My point to you, all I'm saying to you, Ron, is that your rejection of the idea of spirit of tree is an arbitrary one. It's based in dogma, because in other instances, you use spirit in the same way. You accept the idea that there's spirit of gravity. You know it exists. You don't know why it exists. It just exists. Spirit of gravity. That's it.
No.
Spirit of tree.
George,
That's it.
George, we completely agree with you. James, can you tell us what your thoughts are?
Jyoti, could you please leave the order to me?
Okay. Yes, I will. It's
Thank
just
you.
getting It's getting a little disorderly.
No,
Sorry.
Excuse me, Ron, may I ask you a question? Is there a time limit on in this meeting or not?
Obviously not.
No. I just wonder.
No,
Since it's the first time I come, I don't know what.
What happens is that we carry on until we sort of stop and people enjoy it and carry on. And as far as I'm concerned, it's fine. Anybody can leave when they want.
No, I'm just asking.
No, we're having an interesting discussion, so it goes on. I don't have beliefs. I don't believe in spirit of anything. I don't believe in the spirit of gravity. I think that gravity is. I don't know what gravity is. It's not a spirit of anything. There's no woo-woo about it. A gravity things fall, and that at one point science will explain what gravity is, and then we either accept it because a year after another scientist will come along and say, no, that's not right. Spirit is gravity is something else. I accept that. That's all we can do. But to actually say that I know what reality is, and that is it, that is not philosophy, and that's not science. I don't know what it is. It maybe things are spirits. That's all right. If you believe things are spirits, that's fine. Don't expect though others to believe that spirits are. I should say is that a spirit is, because it isn't. As far as I'm concerned, it is. As far as you're concerned, it is. I accept. No. I accept the fact that you believe that the trees have spirits. I accept it.
But
Don't
my point is this.
misunderstand me.
I find you accept it. But this is my simple point. This is really what I'm driving at. Okay. Is that my reasoning, and this is very important distinction here. My reasoning is fully based in empiricism, or I submit that your reasoning is not.
There is no empiricism in saying that trees have a spirit. Sorry.
Okay. There is empirical reasoning. Let me finish my thought. You just made a claim. Let me respond to that. Let me respond to that.
That was Kant's thing. The thing in itself. It means absolutely nothing.
Can I say this?
Those are words. They're words.
Can I say this?
Yes.
I just want to say this. You made a very important claim that there's no empirical basis for my claim. I just want to respond to this. Okay. Which is to say, the fact that people speak of truth is ipso facto empirical proof that there is spirit of truth.
Can you repeat that, please?
The fact that people speak of tree, right? The way that people use that concept of tree and apply it ipso facto shows us that there is empirical evidence that there is spirit of tree.
No connection whatsoever. People speak about God as well. There's empirical evidence that there's God. People speak about pixies and spirits and ghosts. That there's empirical evidence for that.
Wait a second.
Because people speak of it.
Wait a second.
Because
Wait
you
a second.
say
James.
No. Hold on, please. This is very important. Let me just finish this thought.
No, you said it.
Oh, for the love of God, Michael, please. You're not the moderator.
Hang on. But I am.
I know you are.
Please let James say his thing. He's so patient and
Go
so
ahead, please.
nice.
Go ahead,
He's
James.
so nice. James.
Well, we like to hear people argue with you, Ron. I think it's an exciting part of the meeting.
I'm
and,
used to it. I'm used to it. It's okay.
You're still doing a great job of moderating. Everything is fine in my opinion. And I've never enjoyed listening to you more, George. You know, you're fired up, and some of your points are definitely getting. At least they're in the ballpark of where the argument is lying. You know, acceptance or non-acceptance of a particular position or dogma. But it begins to illustrate that point a little bit. You know, like when is a kind of like a understood truth actually taking the place of illustrating the place of a dogma, and we got a little bit into this word empiricism. That's really what I wanted to talk about was Hegel and empiricism, because in the 18th century, that's when empiricism became really important. And somebody mentioned, like, well, science is so great because it doesn't, you know, it learned from certain lessons and, you know, from these 18th century philosophers and so forth. And it's kind of the fact is that there were a lot of misunderstandings when empiricism started. There were a lot of kind of dogmas that were invented, and science has taken care of some of those, but it's really through philosophy. It's partly through Hegel. Hegel is responsible for exposing a lot of the dogmas that occurred in empiricism in the 18th century and bringing philosophy forward. At the time of Hegel, there was this kind of reliance on theology. There was a general civil, what do you call it, a civil or cultural reliance on theology, and the notion of anti-theology was emerging, but it didn't become actually fully implemented until perhaps the time of Nietzsche, the end of the 19th century. That it was kind of it was a dynamic in the 18th and 19th centuries. Anti-theology was kind of like an emerging dynamic that didn't become established until around the end of the 19th century, if not even fully established. But I'm just saying that there was a difficulty in philosophy that I think was very dominant and very dominating, that lasted past the time of Hegel. Maybe it became attacked fully by Marx and Engels, I'm not sure, but you know, it was at least mentioned by them, and they were conscious about it. So now we have these discussions that are entirely, if not anti-theological, they're entirely independent of theological notions, and that which is a great amount of liberation that we have emerged into. And so that's a difference between us, that lies between us and Hegel. But Hegel was instrumental in exposing a lot of the scientific misconceptions of the 18th century philosophers, and bringing the notions, certain notions of scientific actualization of scientific method forward in his time, by basically by exposing some of these misconceptions of empiricism. So I just wanted to mention that's one of the really important aspects of Hegel's work, and so I wanted to expose that.
Thank you very much, James. I think we can wrap this up.
Can I say something though?
Definitely.
It's important to say this.
Definitely.
You made an important claim, okay? Which is, you said people speak of fairies, okay? Now, it's important to know that, now we're assuming rational minds here, okay? That when people speak of fairies, even to the extent that they think fairies are real, they understand that empirically, they're talking about a different phenomenon than they are talking about trees, okay? So in other words, people that speak of fairies know, okay, you can't see fairies, or they're, you know, people don't see them. You know, so in other words, people, you know, even the suggestion that you're making that people speak of trees and they speak of God the same way. I mean, that really, first and foremost, you're just trying to smear an idea. It's important to know. Secondly, even when people speak of these things, they understand that ontologically a tree and a fairy and God are completely different things. Moreover, it's important to know that people throughout the world, without exception, look at tree and say tree. Okay, so again, there's probably more. I can even make an argument to it. There's more reason to think about the universality of trees than there is of gravity, because we can go to another part of the universe and gravity may very well operate differently there than here. But also, however, if there's no tree there, there's simply no tree there, right? So there's more of a claim about the universality of tree as a concept and as a spirit than there is a universality of gravity. So I keep going back to this, which is that I keep going back to this point time and time again, which is simply to say that the rejection of the idea of spirit of tree is, again, anti-intellectual and actually an obstacle to knowledge. So to say that spirit of tree is a fact, I mean, what is that the negation of knowledge? We've arrived at knowledge. Now we could do things with that knowledge. We can understand the world better with that knowledge than simply say, oh, there is no spirit of tree, because that just leaves us in ignorance. Even we're still wallowing in the idea of what is. What is spirit, and we can then move forward and build knowledge. That's the point I'm getting at.
Well, now
I think trees are just bigger flowers. That's all.
And to say that scientists don't think that trees are trees is really off.
Oh, and by the way, a tomato is not a vegetable, it's a fruit. But everybody thinks it's a vegetable. Strange. Just, voilà.
Anyway.
Salut.
Well, Josh has a comment.
Well, if what you said, Michael, if what you said about trees is true, then humans are really just bigger genital organs.
Very
Well, to some people, yes.
Possible. Very possible.
Right.
Some people think that
Very
people are
possible.
things, and other people think that people are people.
I mean,
That's the difference between a dictator and a Democrat.
I can assure you, George, that people who believe in fairies see fairies just as much as they see trees. A fairy is real. A fairy is real. A tree is real, and you can't argue with that. And people who believe in God as much as you believe in your spirits of trees.
Well,
and I believe in neither of them.
No, but listen to me. What I'm saying to you is that even people that assert God understand that ontologically a tree is different than God, a fairy is different than God. Ontologically, a tree and a rock are similar insofar as that they exist in a rock that you could touch and you could feel these spirits. Whereas God, if they exist, you can't. So if people understand this ontologically, and your effort to dismiss it is just nonsensical. Josh has his hand up.
It is definitely nonsensical. Especially
your point is nonsensical.
Fair enough. I accept the fact that you think that. It's okay. I don't mind. I come across that all the time. But my philosophy is not ontological. It is to do with knowledge. And
knowledge is ontological, Ron. It's a process.
Okay.
A tree today is different than the tree tomorrow, right? Your knowledge of a tree today, that same knowledge is different tomorrow because the tree changes.
Right. And now it is time to say goodbye.
Okay, Josh has his hand up, but okay.
Josh, can we say goodbye?
We can say goodbye.
Can we say goodbye?
I'll say goodbye together.
We've been at it for 3.5 hours.
I've been at it for 5 hours.
Oh, well, you've been at it for 2 months, as far as I'm concerned, since the last time I saw you. I enjoyed the discussion very much. Thank you very much, George. You made it very, very interesting. I hope you come again, and you're not angry with me, etc., etc. I hope you come again, because it is very interesting that we have these discussions. There's no point agreeing. There's no progress when people agree. There's only progress when people disagree. Then we move on bit by bit by bit.
The dialectical philosophical method. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. See you next time.
All right.
Bye, everybody. Bye.